Chapter 1501 Yuan's Room. Chapter 1501 Yuan's Room. 1501 Yuan's Room. When Wu Zhao noticed the weird expression on Yan Xiaoxiao's face, he smiled and said, "Even though we know we won't ever win, we still benefit a lot from our losses because he doesn't just spar with us. He trains us at the same time. You should give it a try later." "You want me to spar with Yuan?" Yan Xiaoxiao wore a look of disbelief on her pretty face. "Why not? You're already here. Might as well get the full experience." Wu Zhao chuckled. Yuan smiled at this idea and agreed, "Don't worry, it won't hurt that much." "So it'll still hurt?" she exclaimed. She took a deep breath and sighed, "But you're right. I might as well get the full experience. What better way of knowing someone than to exchange blows with them?" Yuan and Wu Zhao began their spar shortly after, with Yan Xiaoxiao capturing every moment, or at least trying to. "He's moving too fast for me," Yan Xiaoxiao cried inwardly. In the end, she gave up trying to follow Yuan's movements and focused on Wu Zhao, who was desperately trying to defend against Yuan's relentless attacks. The spar was one-sided, with Wu Zhao barely able to do anything at first. However, Wu Zhao quickly adapted and improved, allowing him to fight Yuan to a reasonable degree. Unbeknownst to Yan Xiaoxiao, Wu Zhao was being lectured by Yuan through divine sense as they fought. Suddenly, a figure that didn't belong to either Yuan or Wu Zhao appeared behind Yuan and tried to sneak attack him. Ding. Yuan casually blocked the sneak attack. "Damn it. I thought I finally got you this time," Wang Ming exclaimed before he was sent flying by Yuan's sword swing. Yet, despite Wang Ming's random sneak attack that intruded on their spar, neither Yuan nor Wu Zhao looked surprised or seemed bothered by it. What's going on?" Yan Xiaoxiao wore a puzzled look on her face. "You seem confused." Wang Bingbing suddenly appeared beside her and asked. Seeing her nod, Wang Bingbing continued, "This was encouraged by Yuan. He said that if anyone manages to sneak an attack on him successfully, he will reward that person with a powerful martial technique or spiritual weapon. Oh, we can only do this when he's in the training ground." "I see," Yan Xiaoxiao muttered. "Hey, let me join your spar," Wang Ming said after recovering from being thrown. "Sure." Yuan calmly nodded. Thus, Wu Zhao and Wang Ming started attacking Yuan together. "We can also try to take him down together. If we manage to defeat him, all of us will receive a reward." Wang Bingbing continued explaining. "I guess you haven't been able to defeat him yet?" Yan Xiaoxiao said. "Nope, but I can feel that day getting close." Wang Bingbing also joined Wu Zhao and Wang Ming shortly later, making it a 3 versus 1. The rest of the Demon Sealing faction members eventually joined the chaotic fight. Chu Liuxiang was the last to show up and join the fight, turning it into a 10 versus 1 spar. Fighting so many talented individuals simultaneously while limiting himself to basic sword techniques was difficult even for Yuan, especially when Li Jinxi and her explosive growth joined the fray. And since nobody there needed to worry about accidentally killing Yuan due to his heaven-defying regeneration ability, they were all able to go all out without holding anything back, fighting him as though their lives were on the line. Heavens! Are they seriously trying to kill him? Yan Xiaoxiao was terrified by what she was witnessing. Each attack by the Demon Sealing faction members exuded genuine killing intent, and they were all aiming for life-threatening areas such as his neck and heart without any hesitation in their movements. If a stranger were to stumble upon this scene without any context, they would undoubtedly think Yuan was being targeted by a group of seasoned killers. However, despite their efforts and cooperation, Yuan defeated them and emerged victorious without a single injury to his body. Considering the God of War's extensive fighting experience, it was only natural for him to dominate opponents who had barely 20 years of practice. "All right, Wu Zhao." Yuan suddenly called out to him as he lay on the ground from exhaustion. "Since you defeated the most players during the faction war, you can receive the ancient rank technique. Do you have any specific techniques in mind?" "ID like a movement technique, something that will keep my opponents away from me." Yuan nodded. "All right, I'll let you know when I find something suitable." "Thank you." Yuan approached Yan Xiaoxiao after the spar. "I'm going to clean myself real quick. We can spar after the interview." "Okay. Can I have a look in your room later?" she asked. "Sure. We're heading there anyway." They left the training ground while the others continued to train with each other. As they approached Yuan's room, Yan Xiaoxiao could feel her heartbeat speeding up. "Yuan's room. Yuan's room. I'm going to enter Yuan's room," she screamed internally. "It's nothing fancy, so don't expect much," Yuan said as he opened the door, revealing his room. "I won't take long." Yuan entered the bathroom shortly later, leaving Yan Xiaoxiao alone. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, Yen Xiaoxiao stopped recording temporarily and retrieved her personal camera. She proceeded to take selfies of herself in various areas in Yuan's room. Sometime later, she turned to look at the bed and swallowed nervously. I really shouldn't do this, but please forgive me for this. After positioning her camera and setting a timer, Yen Xiaoxiao entered the bed and began posing in various poses. Click, click, click. The camera took a picture every 3 seconds and didn't stop until an entire minute later. Yen Xiaoxiao checked the results afterward and was incredibly satisfied. This is definitely going into my collections, she giggled sheepishly. Yuan came out of the bathroom feeling refreshed several minutes later to find Yen Xiaoxiao staring at her camera with a weird expression on her face. Chapter 1502 End of the Interview? Chapter 1502 End of the Interview 1502 End of the Interview. Done, Yuan called out to Yen Xiaoxiao, startling her, who was absorbed with her new collection. Right. Yen Xiaoxiao hastily stowed away her personal camera and retrieved the one used for the interview. After taking a moment to look through her notes, she asked, "Do you have any specific goal you're chasing in?" "I wanted to explore the entire world of when I first started. While that is true still, I have a different goal now, one that I am still trying to comprehend fully." This goal was shared by all of his incarnations, so Yuan was certain that he would eventually have to face it even if he didn't know the details for now. "A goal you don't comprehend? Sounds complicated," Yen Xiaoxiao muttered. She continued, "What is the Demon Sealing faction's relationship with the Eternal Lotuses? Rumors have been saying you fought the Fiery Locust Swarm for them. We're in an alliance and they were being bullied by the Fiery Locust Swarm, so I decided to teach them a lesson." "Oh. Since when did you form the alliance with each other?" Yen Xiaoxiao's eyes flickered at his surprising news. "It was established only recently. Since the Fiery Locust Swarm is under the Fiery Garden of Hell's command, is your challenge to the Fiery Garden of Hell related to the Eternal Lotuses?" "No, my challenge to the Fiery Garden of Hell, or more specifically, Fiery Queen, has little to do with the Eternal Lotuses and is more personal. I guess that confirms the rumor about you and the Fiery Queen being on bad terms. Can you tell us the reason?" Yen Xiaoxiao asked. "It's nothing crazy. We had a little skirmish inside. I wanted to keep our drama inside, but she decided to involve my friends and family outside of, so I am just responding to her provocation." "Is that so?" Then, time passed quickly and it was noon before Yen Xiaoxiao was aware. "Okay, let's end it here. I have more than enough material to make several movies," Yen Xiaoxiao said with a satisfied smile. During the interview she asked Yuan over 100 questions, most of which related to, "Once again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to interview the Demon Sealing faction." Yen Xiaoxiao bowed to him. "In the future, if there's a chance, I would like to interview your journey in too." Yuan nodded. "If there's ever an opportunity. I will send you the interview first once I complete it. If there is anything you would like me to edit or remove, just let me know." Yen Xiaoxiao stayed the night and joined them for breakfast the following day. After breakfast, Yen Xiaoxiao went to the training ground to spar with Yuan. Yen Xiaoxiao was only at the 5th level of Spirit Master, and she wielded a sword. "Please go easy on me," she said. "That's only natural. Otherwise I would kill you in the blink of an eye." Yuan chuckled. "You know what I mean? Then I'll assess your current level first. Come at me with everything you've got. You saw how the others sparred with me yesterday, right? Fight as if your life depends on it. Don't worry about hurting me because you won't be able to do so." Hearing his provocative words at the end, Yen Xiaoxiao felt the urge to prove him wrong and quickly wore a serious expression on her face. Once she was prepared, Yen Xiaoxiao lunged at Yuan and started attacking him with all of her power. Yuan didn't say anything and either dodged or blocked her attacks for the first few minutes. Once he fully understood Yen Xiaoxiao's strengths and weaknesses, he started lecturing her through divine sense, even demonstrating it through their spar. Yen Xiaoxiao rarely engaged in combat and never had an instructor. Her inexperience was evident in her stiff and awkward movements. "It's been a while since I last fought someone this inexperienced." Yuan smiled inwardly. Their spar ended quickly because Yen Xiaoxiao, despite going all out, didn't know how to utilize her energy properly and ended up wasting most of it. "You're a complete beginner. I didn't expect this," Yuan said afterward. Yen Xiaoxiao showed an embarrassed smile and said, "I enjoy cultivating but I don't enjoy fighting." "It's okay to dislike fighting, but you should still prepare yourself for it. The world is becoming more dangerous after all." "I understand. I'll start training more often now." Sometime later, Yan Xiaoxiao said goodbye to the Demon Sealing faction and left the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Now that the interview is over, I'm going to return to cultivation online and start making my way to the third heaven, Yuan said to the others. How long do you plan on staying down there? Zhilang asked. Not long. I'm meeting up with Bai Lianhua to give her some things, that's all. Chu Liuxiang then asked, what about us? Should we come with you? You can stay in the fourth heaven and continue your training. Later that night, Yuan followed Meishio to her room to spend the night. Yuan, is everything okay? Do I look worried about something? Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Not worried, but you have something on your mind, especially when you look at me, at least that's how it feels to me. She caressed his face and sighed, if there's anything you need to take off your chest, I am here. Yuan didn't immediately answer, but after a moment of hesitation he said in a low voice, I recalled all of the evil god's memories. All of it? How many years of experience is that? Meishio stared at him with wide eyes. Thousands and thousands of years of slaughter and atrocities. I don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry. I want to understand, but I don't know how you feel, nor can I pretend to understand. Meishio sighed, her heart heavy, knowing she couldn't assist him. Chapter 1503 Xiu Mei. Chapter 1503 Xiu Mei. 1503 Xiu Mei. Seeing Meixia's beautiful face lying right next to him, Yuan pondered if he should tell her about her incarnation as Xiu Mei, that they'd been together in their previous lives. Since Li Jinxi and Chu Liuxiang are already beginning to recall their past life memories, it wouldn't be weird if Meishio is also doing the same. As far as he knew, Meishio could have already recalled all of her memories and was simply waiting for him. The reason he didn't outright tell Li Jinxi and Chu Liuxiang about their past lives was that he didn't want to force the memories upon them. Since they were already beginning to recall their pasts on their own, he saw no need to hasten the natural process, as it could potentially backfire. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke, during my life as the evil god, I had a wife. We've known each other and been together since childhood. We had a child. She was my everything and her name was Xiu Mei. Unfortunately, I was unable to protect her and she was murdered along with our unborn child. Because of her death, I went on a rampage and killed countless people, not to mention the atrocities I've committed. When I get the chance, I am going to apologize to her. Meishio felt a weird sensation in her chest when she heard the name Xiu Mei. When you get the chance. I thought she passed away? Meishio asked in a puzzled tone. Reincarnation is not unique to me. Unless their soul is shattered, everyone who dies will eventually be reincarnated. The only difference between them and me is our ability to remember our past lives, and there are other people other than me who can remember their past. There are others? How do you know that? Because 2 of them live among us. Huh. Oh. Meishio was surprised to hear this and immediately became curious. Li Jinxi and Lulu, but they don't remember everything and are still in the process. They also don't know that I know, so keep this a secret for me until they decide to tell us. Meishio nodded and mumbled, so they also recall their past life. I wonder what my past life was like. Yuan smiled and asked, do you want to know? Chen, you know my past life? She stared at him with wide eyes. He silently acknowledged with a nod. Meishio swallowed nervously and spoke, don't tell me. Xiu Mei, what makes you think that? Yuan was slightly surprised by her intuition. Just a feeling. I was right? He nodded, yes, you were my wife when I was still the evil god. Meishio fell silent. To think things would turn out like this. Is this a coincidence or are we bound by fate? She wondered inwardly, feeling blissful knowing that she was also with Yuan in their past life. Are you okay? Yuan asked when she remained silent, wondering if it was too shocking for her. Yes. I am just a little surprised by this information, and am not sure how to respond to it. However, I can say that I am very happy that you told me. Even if I might never remember it myself, I bet the time I spent with you was incredibly blissful. By the way, how do you know that it was my past life? For starters, you look exactly the same as Xiu Mei. Moreover, those around me in this life seem to have a close connection with me in my past life. Chen? Does this mean Lulu is also? Yes. Li Jinxi too. However, they are not related to the evil god but my other incarnations instead. Meishio wore a bewildered look on her face. This information shocked her more than her own reincarnation. Exactly how many past lives have you lived? She couldn't help but ask. I don't know, but I have memories of 7 so far. As 7? That's a lot. Omicronim, if you consider how long this universe has existed, living 7 lives isn't that shocking. Yuan chuckled. Any questions? After a moment of silence she asked, "What was our daily life like? Before our marriage or after?" "Both." "Then I'll start from when we first met. Prepare yourself since this will take the entire night." Thus, Yuan spent the rest of the night recalling his memories with Xiu Mei to Meitio. Meitio would ask questions here and there. Was Xiu Mei on birth control pills? Why did it take so long for her to become pregnant? Not that I was aware of. It's unlikely though, since she was always excited to have a child. Also, things work differently for female cultivators in general when it comes to giving birth. Due to the spiritual energy in their body, not only is it harder to become pregnant, but the time it takes for the child to come out also differs. So, while Immortal typically gives birth after 9 months of pregnancy, it could take years for a female cultivator to give birth. The difference is even larger for cultivators with a stronger cultivation. "Is that so?" Meitio muttered with a pondering look on her face. "Are you interested in having a child?" Yuan suddenly asked her. "No." Meitio hastily responded before continuing, "I mean, I don't particularly care. Do you want one? Considering that you never saw your child in your past life, I wouldn't be surprised if you have the desire for one. So, if you want one." "I won't refuse," Yuan chuckled. "While it's true that I have the desire to have a child, that desire belongs to Tian. As for myself, I still think I am too young for one, not to mention all of the ongoing changes in the world. Perhaps once everything settles down, if you say so." Meitio nodded. The following day Yuan returned to cultivation online. Meanwhile, Meitio went to find Wang Xiuying. "How can I help you, Meitio? You're an alchemist, correct? Do you know if there are any pills for birth control?" "Huh? Birth control pills? Of course. Why are you?" A cheeky smile appeared on Wang Xiuying's face as she came to a realization. "Do you want me to concoct you some? A single one will last for an entire year." "They last that long?" Meitio said in a surprised tone. "How effective are they?" "Pretty much 100% effectiveness. However, there is an extremely tiny chance that one could still be impregnated. That said, it's so small that it can be ignored." "Do you mind making me some?" "I'll pay for them," Meitio said as she was getting tired of consuming the typical birth control pills that required her to eat them daily, causing her to leave cultivation online constantly. In fact, she missed a few days because she was too absorbed in her training in cultivation online. Fortunately, it had been some time since she last embraced Yuan. "If I want to train properly without any distractions, these pills are a necessity," Meitio thought to herself. "You don't need to pay me. These pills are cheap and easy to make. I'll have them ready in an hour," Wang Xiuying said. Meitio nodded. "Thank you." After Meitio left her room, Wang Xiuying mumbled to herself, "Should I make some for Chu Liuxiang as well?" Chapter 1504 Leaving the Shadow Realm. Chapter 1504 Leaving the Shadow Realm. 1504 Leaving the Shadow Realm. After returning to the Shadow Realm, Yuan summoned his soul weapons and asked the Immortals, "Do you know the way out of here? Last time I was teleported out of here by the Great One. I doubt he'd be willing to do it again since I refused to be his disciple." The Great One wanted you to be his disciple?" Yu Ning's voice was filled with a profound, almost incredulous shock. "That's the supreme being who stood at the apex of the cultivation world even during the primordial realm. It was an existence that not even the celestial emperor dared to approach, much less covet. For such a great existence to take an interest in you, I guess you're even more talented than I had ever dared to imagine." Jiran spoke, his voice tinged with awe. "You're awake. Are you okay? How do you feel right now?" Yuan asked after hearing Jiran's voice. "Besides feeling a little tired, I feel perfectly fine. The spiritual energy in your world is much worse than I'd anticipated. I could barely breathe there." Jiran sighed. Yu Ning then said, "Our young master's potential is beyond even your imagination, Jiran." Young master? Since when did you start addressing him that?" Jiran asked. "His identity is also far beyond your wildest imaginations. It's only natural for someone as lowly in comparison to show this level of respect." Since Jiran was slumbering when Yuan revealed his identity as the immortal monarch's reincarnation, he had no clue why Yu Ning was being so respectful. Additionally, unless he possessed Yuan's body like Yu Ning, Jiran would have no idea how heaven-defying Yuan's body was. Moreover, unless Yuan summoned the soul weapon they were occupying on Earth, neither Jiran nor Yu Ning would be able to see or hear anything from Earth. After Jiran fell asleep from exhaustion, Yuan sent him back to recover. As for Yuning, while Yuan has kept the Empyrean Overlord summoned for his entire stay on Earth, Yuning sealed her senses within the soul weapon when Yuan entered Mixius' room for their privacy, so she also wasn't aware of their conversation last night. Anyways, several exits could be found in the Shadow Realm, but they are not in a fixed position and always move around. The closest one I can sense is about 10,000 miles to the south. Qiran said. All right. Yuan immediately flew toward the south. How long do I have before it moves? He asked as he traveled. The time each exit moves varies. Sometime later Yuan arrived at his destination, where a massive black portal was surrounded by a massive sea of banished souls. He didn't immediately leave the Shadow Realm since he still had to prepare for the sword spirit waiting for him outside. As he spectated the situation before him from a safe distance, Yuan watched as the banished souls attempted to enter the black portal, only to be bounced off it, almost as though they had run into an invisible wall right before the exit. Only those with a physical body may leave through that exit, hence why we've been stuck in here since the primordial realm. Yuning sighed when she saw this familiar scene. Once upon a time she had been among the banished souls in this place, relentlessly attempting to escape the Shadow Realm. She mindlessly bashed against the invisible wall for hundreds, even thousands of years before she finally gave up and accepted her fate to rot within the Shadow Realm. Qiran suffered a similar fate. In fact, every banished soul within the Shadow Realm had attempted to escape at least once. Though none had succeeded on their own, it didn't deter the others from trying. What are you waiting for? Qiran asked when Yuan hadn't tried to leave for many minutes. Yuan explained the situation to them. There is a formidable spirit waiting for me outside. I'm just taking a moment to prepare myself. By the way, this exit will take me to the Vanishing Valley, where I originally entered the Shadow Realm, correct? I know there are multiple entrances to the Shadow Realm throughout the 9 heavens, so how can I be sure this exit will lead me back to the Vanishing Valley and not somewhere else? He asked. I don't think you need to worry about that, young master. The Shadow Realm tracks where you entered from and will automatically take you back there. Yuning said. Is that so? Yuan remained still for a few more minutes before making a move. He unleashed his cultivation to the maximum, causing the surroundings to tremble. Then he flew toward the black portal. The banished souls were immediately alerted by Yuan's presence. Upon seeing that he had a physical body, they rushed at him like a group of starving beasts. Human? Physical body, Omicronym, escape. The strength of the banished souls varied greatly. Some were weak, while others were as powerful as immortals. Yuan didn't dare to underestimate them and unleashed his soul strength. Unlike before, he wasn't just trying to scare them. He was determined to destroy them. Scram. He activated Dragon's Gaze at its full power. When the banished souls were struck by Dragon's Gaze, most were destroyed before they could even utter a sound. The stronger banished souls were momentarily stunned, overwhelmed by the fear of their souls being shattered. Yuan didn't pause for a split second and continued shooting toward the black portal, disappearing from the Shadow Realm a second later. After exiting the Shadow Realm, Yuan didn't stop moving and even accelerated his movement technique. Meanwhile, before Yuan could even leave the Shadow Realm fully, the sword spirit resting above the giant sword immediately sensed the change in the atmosphere and turned to look at the location that was causing the disturbance. He's back. The sword spirit clenched her fists in anticipation and prepared to seize him the moment he appeared. Chapter 1505 Sword Spirit. Chapter 1505 Sword Spirit. 1505 Sword Spirit. After leaving the Shadow Realm, Yuan didn't stop to see where Head exited and continued speeding forward. He wasn't sure if the sword spirit could leave the giant sword or how far he had to travel before her attacks could no longer reach him, so he could only pray for the best. The moment he returned to the Vanishing Valley, he could immediately sense the sword spirit's gaze on him, sending chills throughout his entire being. What a powerful spirit. I have never felt such a profound cultivation before either. Yuning cried out loud after seeing the sword spirit with her own eyes. Heavens! If such a being existed during the primordial era, it could have easily slaughtered the Celestial Emperor and his army by itself. Qiran was left in awe by her almighty presence. The sword spirit narrowed her gaze on the sword majestic sword in Yuan's grasp. After confirming that it was indeed the Empyrean Overlord, she muttered in a trembling voice, I have been looking for you. However, she suddenly frowned and her expression turned grim. Her entire body trembled in anger, and her body seethed with immense killing intent. Who the fuck is that bitch? The sword spirit's voice, infused with her immense cultivation base, boomed, creating a profound ripple that swept through the entire vanishing valley and beyond, resounding throughout the entire fourth heaven in the blink of an eye. The sword spirit boasted a profound cultivation at the peak of the god ascension realm, essentially the apex of the cultivation world, just below a cultivation god. With so few people achieving cultivation god status since the primordial era, those who reached the 9th level of the god ascension realm were considered the pinnacle of power. The presence of god ascension realm cultivators should not exist within the fourth heaven, so her aura enveloping the world sent it into turmoil, shocking and terrifying all the experts there. Normally, the heavens would intervene and try to restrict cultivators who did not belong there or force them to ascend, but the Vanishing Valley was a unique location that ignored the laws of heaven, so as long as the sword spirit remained inside its space, it was essentially untouchable. As for Yuan, who was the closest to the sword spirit, his movements were immediately suppressed, and a crushing sensation forced him to his knees. This overwhelming pressure was a new experience for Yuan, even with the evil god's memories. His peak was only at the 6th level of the god ascension realm during the evil god's prime, and he did not have to fight anyone at the peak of the god ascension realm. So this is what it's like to be at the top of the cultivation world. Instead of fearing for his life, an excited smile appeared on Yuan's face. However, even with all of his powerful treasures and the golden immortal physique, Yuan found himself unable to stand up, much less run away. The difference between the god ascension realm and his current level was simply too vast and insurmountable. Meanwhile, the sword spirit leaped off the giant sword and landed right in front of Yuan a split second later. Yuan had to use all his strength just to lift his head high enough to look at the sword spirit's face. She was a woman of unparalleled beauty, standing tall with an elegant, slender frame that exudes noble grace. Her hair is a cascade of obsidian black, falling in silky waves that shimmered subtly even when surrounded by darkness. Her eyes are a striking contrast, gleaming with the richness of molten gold. They hold a depth and intensity that can captivate anyone who meets her gaze. Besides her aura, the sword spirit was indistinguishable from a human being. Although this was Yuan's first time seeing her, an uncanny sense of familiarity washed over him, as if he had encountered her in another lifetime. While Yuan gazed at her face, which exuded coldness that could freeze an entire continent, the sword spirit's eyes were fixed on the Empyrean overlord in his grasp. "You, how dare you permit another presence within my body, especially a woman?" the sword spirit muttered in a grim voice, laden with killing intent, as if she was on the verge of strangling him. "What do you mean?" Yuan's eyes widened at her unexpected words. "Silence, you unfaithful bastard. I didn't spend thousands of years in this gloomy place for this nonsense," she interrupted, raising her hand in a chopping gesture. "You deserve death for this betrayal." The sword spirit's entire being gushed with killing intent, and she swung her arm before Yuan could even utter another word. "Brother Yuan." Xiao Hua's voice suddenly resounded as her body, in the form of a cloud of purple mist, emerged from his body and carried him out of the path of the sword spirit's attack. The path cleaved by the sword spirit's strike split in half, birthing a long and profound earth fissure that could easily swallow entire cities with ease. Yuan swallowed nervously when he saw the result. The sword spirit definitely acted with the intent to kill him. Heavens, she wasn't joking about killing me, he cried inwardly. He then noticed the sword spirit preparing for a second strike. Seeing this, he hastily said, "Wait. You're the Empyrean overlord spirit, right?" The sword spirit suddenly halted her movements. Just as Yuan thought that she had calmed down, the sword spirit began trembling again, her body seething with uncontrollable rage. "So you don't even recognize me anymore, huh?" An unfathomable aura exuded from her body, and it was strong enough to completely obliterate anything in its path if released through a martial technique. "My lord, it's going to destroy the fourth heaven at this rate," Jiran cried out loud. "You must do something to stop this spirit, young master," Yuning also cried, her voice filled with dread. Sensing the desperate situation, the Empyrean overlord began trembling, and from deep within, a memory long concealed emerged, surfacing in Yuan's mind. Chapter 1506 3 Major Paths. Chapter 1506 3 Major Paths 1506 3 Major Paths. Have you heard? The sword saint, Zhu Minji, met his demise when his weapon shattered mid-battle against the spear devil, Lei Zhen. Yuan could hear the people around him mumbling as he casually enjoyed his food in a noodle shop. How is that possible? He wielded the Heaven Splitter, a mythic-grade spiritual treasure, a creation of the heaven and earth blacksmith Han Bing. Such a formidable weapon would be unbreakable even by a true immortal. Well, the Spear Devil has the Heaven Piercer, an Empyrean-grade spiritual treasure created by the Eternal Blacksmith, and it specializes in breaking weapons. The Heavenly Blacksmith and the Eternal Blacksmith, huh? They've been rivals since they were mere apprentice blacksmiths thousands of years ago, fighting for the title of God of Creation. Now they both stand at the top of the world as divine blacksmiths, being one step behind their goal. However, the Eternal Blacksmith managed to create an Empyrean-grade treasure first, so I guess he's better. They may be amazing, but are they worthy of the God of Creation title? Only those who can create celestial-grade treasures should be worthy of that position. There are 3 major secondary paths a cultivator can pursue. The first and most popular involves studying medicine to support the world with their pills. They are alchemists. The second path belongs to array masters, whose formations and arrays can influence the world on a grand scale. The most common and sought-after formations are defensive ones, typically established around sects and powerful family households. The third and final path, which is also the least popular and most difficult to master, is that of the blacksmiths. They are responsible for crafting the weapons and artifacts that aid cultivators in battle. There are other paths one could take, but those are considered niche when compared to the major 3. While one could argue which of these 3 major paths benefits cultivators the most, it is undeniable that all are foundational to the cultivation world and even the mortal world. The world would look vastly different if even one of these paths were missing. Suddenly, someone spoke up. The Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith are impressive, no doubt, but their names are already well known. I've heard rumors of a rising blacksmith with a mysterious background. They say that he'd crafted a spirit-grade weapon that could outshine even peak-quality Earth-grade weapons. What kind of nonsense is that? As if a weapon like that could exist. Unlike cultivation, a treasure's grade is absolute, so if a spirit-grade weapon can outshine an Earth-grade weapon, it should be classified as Earth-grade. Who even is this mysterious blacksmith? I consider myself quite knowledgeable in this field, but how come I've never heard of him? People immediately doubted this information. I don't know much about him. All I know is that he appeared out of thin air with weapons of unparalleled perfection that make everything else look fragile and imperfect in comparison. Yuan, who had been silently listening to their conversation this entire time, suddenly spoke. That blacksmith's name is Tian Qiyuan. You better weld that name into your soul because he'll eventually conquer the world with unrivaled treasures. Everyone in the store turned to look at him with raised eyebrows. Tian Qiyuan? Never heard of him. What about you? Nope. He's definitely a nobody. Hearing their words, Yuan stood up and approached their table. With a nonchalant expression, he retrieved a sword from his storage pouch and placed it on the table before them. This is. As the doubters beheld the perfect sword before them, their eyes widened in shock. They swallowed nervously, and their hands subconsciously reached out to touch it. However, before any of them could touch it, Yuan reclaimed the sword and tossed it inside his storage pouch. See that sword? Where did you get it? I have never seen such a perfect sword before. Please? Let me see it again. Just for a few more seconds. Independent Illinois, buy it off you. How much do you want? This noodle shop was frequented by the city's blacksmiths, and they were all experienced enough to gauge a weapon's quality with a single glance. Despite the sword being a mere heaven-grade treasure, it surpassed all expectations, transcending even the pinnacle of peak-quality treasures they had encountered before. That sword was crafted by none other than Tian Qiyuan, Yuan announced proudly. And where did you find him? I must confirm his skills with my own eyes. Yuan shook his head and said, Unfortunately, Tian Qiyuan is a wandering blacksmith, so you'll have a hard time tracking him. When I encountered him by chance, he gave me the sword, asking me to spread his name in exchange. Then I'll buy the sword off you. I'll pay you what a peak-quality divine-grade weapon would cost for it. Someone there offered. I'll pay you enough to purchase any low-quality ancient-grade treasure. It quickly turned into a bid as if they were at an auction house. However, Yuan merely shook his head and said, Sorry, the sword's not for sale. And before any of the blacksmiths could utter another word, he vanished from the store like a ghost, leaving everyone speechless. Rumors of Tian Qiyuan began spreading like wildfire among blacksmiths worldwide after that event, which took place at Starforge Sanctuary, a renowned city dedicated to training blacksmiths and where countless famous blacksmiths were created. It was also the birthplace of the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and the Eternal Blacksmith. Shortly after Tian Qiyuan's name became widespread, his weapons started showing up in auction houses. At first, only spirit-grade treasures were sold, but the quality and grade of the treasure gradually increased throughout the years. These treasures were highly sought after not only by cultivators but also by blacksmiths eager to study them. However, despite countless attempts at analysis, nobody was able to replicate their craftsmanship. Even peak blacksmiths such as the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and the Eternal Blacksmith were unable to replicate Tian Qiyuan's creations. This further skyrocketed his fame and reputation to heights most blacksmiths could only dream of. Chapter 1507 Tian Qiyuan. Chapter 1507 Tian Qiyuan 1507 Tian Qiyuan. In an auction house somewhere in 8th heaven, a tall figure wearing a fiery red mask approached one of the workers there and said, "I have a weapon that I would like to sell here." Without turning his head, the worker glanced at this figure and gave him a quick assessment. The figure, shrouded in a ragged cloak that seemed to have been scorched by fire, stood there with an air of mystery. His cultivation, a mere golden immortal, didn't seem to match the unique aura that emanated from him, leaving the worker perplexed. "If you want to sell your trash, you can go elsewhere. This place isn't a place for beggars either, so scram." The worker sneered. The masked figure's voice rang out, clear and defiant, in response to the worker's mocking words. "Oh? So, this place is so grand that it deems a weapon crafted by the exalted blacksmith Tian Qiyuan to be trash? I suppose I'll heed your advice and find a more appreciative place elsewhere." The masked figure's voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "What? A weapon crafted by the exalted blacksmith? Is that true? The last one was sold over 500 years ago. And it was an ancient-grade treasure that fetched a price that rivals even peak-quality Empyrean-grade treasures. Who called a weapon crafted by the exalted blacksmith trash? Get over here and let me give you a good beating." Every time a treasure related to the exalted blacksmith is revealed, it sends ripples through the 9 heavens, igniting fervor and awe. Even the most successful auction house, the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion, would get on its knees and beg for one to be sold there. Yet in this tiny place they dare to call one useless. The worker standing before the masked figure immediately turned pale upon hearing the people around him, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Why didn't you say it was a weapon created by the exalted blacksmith in the first place? You must be lying to save face." The worker refused to believe the person in front of him would have something so valuable. The masked man didn't utter another word and retrieved a beautiful purple sword. The moment the sword appeared, the atmosphere in the auction house shifted, as if it were in the presence of something extraordinary. The worker choked on his own saliva after seeing the sword, and loud gasps of shock could be heard in every direction. "It's a mythic-grade weapon. This refined aura, that flawless appearance and the distinctive signature on the blade, it's undeniably a treasure crafted by the one and only exalted blacksmith Tian Qiyuan." It's finally happened. The exalted blacksmith has finally stepped into the rank of Grand Blacksmith. He's only one step away from becoming a divine blacksmith like Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith. To advance in rank as a blacksmith, one must successfully craft a treasure corresponding to the desired rank. For example, crafting a spirit-grade treasure earns the title of apprentice blacksmith, while crafting earth-grade treasures elevates one to expert blacksmith. "Please, let me buy it off you. I will pay you as much as you want." The people in the auction house surrounded him and started offering to buy the sword, all of them offering unbelievable amounts of money for it. However, the masked figure merely shook his head and said, "If you want it, fight for it." The people there exchanged glances with each other and prepared to turn the auction house into a battlefield. Seeing this, the masked man quickly continued, "I mean with your money, in a proper setting. It was going to happen in this auction house, but it will have to be delayed due to circumstances. But this is a good opportunity to spread the news more. Please wait a moment, esteemed guest." Someone suddenly approached him in a hasty manner, his body soaked in sweat. "I am the manager of this auction house. Please do not leave. I will execute this useless fool who doesn't have eyes. Please give us another chance. We won't disappoint you again." The masked man looked at the manager and without saying a word, turned around and walked out of the building, leaving the manager utterly devastated. Any auction house blessed by the exalted blacksmith's treasure would inevitably acquire a massive amount of reputation, but this place actually dared to chase such an opportunity away. What a pity. The other customers also started walking out of the auction house shortly after, as they did not want to be associated with the auction house. News of this event quickly spread like wildfire throughout the 9 heavens. In order to save whatever face and reputation they had left, The auction house forced the worker who chased away the masked man to kneel on the streets until his inevitable death. Meanwhile, the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion extended a public invitation to the masked man, imploring him to grace their auction house with the sale of his extraordinary weapon. The masked man accepted their invitation and scheduled the auction to begin in 1 month, allowing people worldwide some time to prepare. Once news spread, not only did people flock to the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion, but even powerhouses from the 9th heaven made the journey to the 8th heaven solely to participate in the auction. From renowned families to powerful sects to individual collectors, a sea of people made their way to the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion the moment they heard about the auction. While the rest of the world was scrambling to gather enough money for the auction, Tian Qiyuan spent his time strolling through the street like a tourist, stuffing his mouth with all sorts of food. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and so many people showed up to the auction that the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion had to hastily change its location just to accommodate more participants. Yet, there was not enough space for everyone, so many had to participate from afar through treasures. Chapter 1508 Violet Dream. Chapter 1508 Violet Dream. 1508 Violet Dream. Look over there. That's the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. The Eternal Blacksmith is here as well. These two renowned divine blacksmiths were quickly identified within the crowd. While the participants of the auction grew increasingly excited for the upcoming auction, Tian Qiyuan himself just arrived at the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion while wearing his red mask. Welcome, esteemed guest. I am Qinglingar, the manager of the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion. Allow me to extend our deepest gratitude for entrusting us with the honor of auctioning your precious treasure. Qinglingar bowed to him in a respectful manner, not daring to repeat the other auction house's mistake. If you have any requests, don't hesitate to ask. Tian Qiyuan nodded and said, Then I would like to have a word with the participants before we begin auctioning my sword. Of course that can be arranged. Anything else? No, that's all for now. May I ask for the esteemed guest's name? If you wish to remain anonymous, that is fine as well. You'll know my name once the auction begins, he said. I understand. Qinglingar didn't question him any further. The auction began some time later. However, as the main event, Tian Qiyuan's weapon would be sold last, with over 100 treasures being sold before it. There were a lot of enticing treasures and even miracle elixirs, but none of the powerhouses even bothered to pay attention, as they were only at the auction for one thing. Several hours later, it was finally Tian Qiyuan's weapon's turn to be sold. Thank you all for visiting our Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion today. We will start the bid for the Exalted Blacksmith's mythic grade treasure soon, but first the seller would like to have a few words with everyone. Qinglingar announced to the participants. Tian Qiyuan approached the stage after receiving the signal. Countless gazes immediately fell upon him, most of them filled with curiosity as they wondered about his identity and how he acquired Tian Qiyuan's treasure. After a moment of silence to build up the tension, Tian Qiyuan spoke, Hello, everyone. This is my first time appearing publicly like this. My name is Tian Qiyuan, and some of you might know me as the Exalted Blacksmith. What? That's Tian Qiyuan? The Exalted Blacksmith in the flesh. Is this real? Many people stood up in shock after hearing this revelation. I am aware that many of you are skeptical of my identity and are expecting me to show my face next. Unfortunately, I wish to keep my face a secret, so I won't be removing my mask or anything today. Tian Qiyuan spoke in a calm voice. He proceeded to retrieve the purple sword head planned on selling today, instantly causing the audience to gasp in shock and awe. This is my first mythic grade treasure. I call it the Violet Dream. Although it's only a mythic grade treasure, it has the prowess to rival even Empyrean grade treasures. It has a special effect that can create illusions, and anyone below God Ascension realm struck by it will enter a deep slumber that can only be reversed with the sword. The audience immediately began mumbling to each other about the sword's ability. What a powerful sounding ability. Too bad it only works against those below the God Ascension realm. Are you hearing yourself? How many people are in the God Ascension realm at this moment? This is a priceless treasure with an extremely powerful effect. I must get my hands on it even if I have to sell all of my belongings and become homeless. However, Tian Qiyuan was not finished speaking and he continued, Now, with the introduction out of the way, I have a special announcement to make. Starting today, after this auction, I will be accepting weapon crafting commissions, and whoever purchases my Violet Dream today will receive priority. The entire place fell silent as everyone digested this information. Once they realized what it meant, the auction house erupted into a crazed frenzy. The Exalted Blacksmith will accept commissions. Heavens! I never thought this day would come. Omicron, haha. I cannot wait to have my dream weapon crafted by him. A few moments later, Tian Qiyuan continued, for the payment, I will only accept 2 methods of payment. The first is spirit jades. The second is any material that is on this list. Tian Qiyuan retrieved a scroll and revealed a long list of rare materials written on it. If you have any material on this list, I will accept that as payment, and you'll also receive priority. In fact, I would like to purchase it from you. The experienced blacksmiths instantly recognized that the list of materials was intended for crafting treasures. Heavens, how many, or what kind of ridiculous treasures is he trying to create with that many rare materials? Even a single material on that list would make a weapon priceless. Eternal Blacksmith muttered to himself with a pondering face. Not even celestial-grade treasures would require that many rare materials. Is he trying to create something that surpasses celestial grade? Not even a god of creation would have such ambitions. Heaven and earth, Blacksmith sighed out loud. Sometime later, Tian Qiyuan said, then I will stop delaying the auction and take my leave now. He turned around and walked away, leaving the Violet Dream behind. The auction commenced shortly, and a frenzied battle for the treasure began. While the treasure itself was highly sought after, it paled in comparison to the value of securing priority for Tian Qiyuan's commission. Tian Qiyuan didn't stay to watch the auction and spent his time in the VIP room drinking tea and listening to music performed by beautiful experts. In the end, the Violet Dream sold for the price of a celestial-grade treasure, a shocking amount that left even the auction house speechless. Here are your earnings after deducting our house fees. Qing Linger handed him a spatial ring loaded with enough spirit jade to create a large sect and fund it for 100,000 years. Chapter 1509 Sword Goddess. Chapter 1509 Sword Goddess. 1509 Sword Goddess. Who won the auction? Tian Qiyuan asked after storing away the money. That would be the Sword Goddess of the Unrivaled 9-Sword Sect, said Qing Linger. Sword Goddess? Never heard of her before. Tian Qiyuan casually commented. She is a prodigious sword master in the Supreme Heaven, renowned for being the first to achieve a level of sword aura that surpasses even the enhanced sword aura. I believe she named it Supreme Sword Aura. Do you wish to speak with her? She's still at the auction house. Tian Qiyuan nodded, sure. Then I'll go inform her right now. Please wait a little, Senior Exalted Blacksmith. After learning of Tian Qiyuan's identity, the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion's attitude toward him changed. While they showed him respect at first, it wasn't directed at the person himself but the weapon he was carrying until they realized his true identity as the Exalted Blacksmith. Sometime later, Qing Linger returned with another individual by her side. She was an exceedingly beautiful woman. With a tall and slender body, long black hair and golden eyes, she exuded an aura of dominance and pride. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Senior Tian. I am Zi Xuan, one of 9 unrivaled swords from the Unrivaled 9-Sword Sect. Zi Xuan bowed to him with the Violet Dream in her grasp. Tian Qiyuan nodded. The Violet Dream already suits you very much, Miss Zi. If you wish to commission me for a treasure, you will always have priority for a single commission. Then I would immediately like to commission you for another sword, she quickly said without an ounce of hesitation in her voice. Is this sword for yourself or someone else? He asked. For myself. All right. Here are my terms. First, you'll give me a brief description of what you're looking for in your sword. If you don't have any idea, I can make it based on your current abilities. 2, you'll supply me with all of the materials for the sword. 3, I will need half of the payment up front and the other half once the sword is completed. If you're paying me with one of the materials on my list, I won't need any upfront payment. Lastly, I will only make 1 weapon per commission. Also, I won't accept any deadlines or tolerate being rushed. And don't even think about scamming me because you'll regret it dearly. Do you agree with my terms? Zi Xuan then said, I agree. As for the payment, I have 2 of the materials you want. What kind of sword can I get with them? Which 2 materials? He inquired. The Empyrean Gold and Tempered Glacial Steel. Tian Qiyuan pondered for a moment before responding, for these 2 materials, I am willing to create a peak-quality mystic-grade sword for you. Deal. Zi Xuan quickly agreed. Then I'll visit the Unrivaled 9-Sword Sect in a month for the details of your sword unless you have another preferred meeting spot. You can come here. As if prepared beforehand, Zi Xuan retrieved a jade slip that contained information about a specific location and handed it to him. After checking the information inside the jade slip, Tian Qiyuan nodded and said, "Then I will see you exactly a month from today. Thank you for purchasing my violet dream." Just as Tian Qiyuan turned around to leave, Zi Xuan suddenly said, "Before you go, can I get your autograph?" "Sure." Tian Qiyuan had no reason to refuse such a simple request. Zi Xuan took out a piece of black cloth and asked, "Can you sign this?" Tian Qiyuan raised an eyebrow when he saw the cloth's unique shape. This is my underwear. It's my favorite too." Omicron M. Qinglinger's eyes widened with disbelief when she heard Zi Xuan's shocking words. She thought it was a joke, but when she saw Zi Xuan's dead serious expression, Qinglinger began doubting if she was in reality or inside an illusion. "You're serious?" Tian Qiyuan had to make sure she wasn't messing with him. "Of course." Zi Xuan confirmed with a confident head nod, leaving him speechless. After a long moment of silence, Tian Qiyuan asked, "How do you want me to sign it?" "You can just write your name on it using spiritual energy. I don't care if it's damaged." "Oh, okay." Tian Qiyuan began writing his name on the piece of cloth by scribbling on it with his finger, which was imbued with spiritual energy, essentially engraving his name on the cloth. After fulfilling her request, Tian Qiyuan cleared his throat and spoke in a stiff tone, "Then I will take my leave now." He disappeared into thin air the next moment. Zi Xuan stared at the signed underwear with a profound smile on her face. Qinglinger's body trembled at the sight. To her knowledge, Zi Xuan was an unfeeling, aloof figure who had never opened her heart to anyone, dedicating every fiber of her being to the mastery of the sword. However, Zi Xuan's actions just now contradicted everything Qinglinger knew about her. "Then I'll take my leave as well," Zi Xuan calmly said a moment later, acting like nothing strange had happened. In the following days, Tian Qiyuan sought information about the sword goddess, Zi Xuan. However, he wasn't inquiring about her because of her weird request or because he was interested in her. Since he was going to make a sword for her, he was simply doing his due diligence as a blacksmith. After all, how could he possibly craft a sword tailored to someone he knows nothing about? Until their meeting, Tian Qiyuan learned everything he could about Zi Xuan through public knowledge. Her demeanor, nature, habits, and whatnot. However, some of the information he gathered contradicted the Zi Xuan he met. Although their meeting wasn't long, it was enough for him to understand her character a little. Zi Xuan, what a peculiar woman. Tian Qiyuan chuckled. Once it was time for their scheduled meeting, Tian Qiyuan made his way to the location inside the jade slip Zi Xuan gave him. Chapter 1510 A Dangerous Obsession. Chapter 1510 A Dangerous Obsession. 1510 A Dangerous Obsession. Since Tian Qiyuan has never been to the Supreme Heaven, Zi Xuan arranged for their meeting somewhere in the 8th heaven. Upon arriving at their designated meeting spot, Tian Qiyuan looked around with his divine sense but couldn't see any buildings or Zi Xuan's presence in a 1,000-mile radius. Even weirder, he was in the middle of nowhere. However, just as he prepared to look around, the empty space before him began to rend apart, as though the very fabric of reality had been cleaved by an unseen force. From this spatial rift, a figure emerged, stepping into the world with an air of otherworldly authority and a face of peerless beauty. Zi Xuan showed a gentle smile and said, "I created an entrance to my humble world here before I returned to the Supreme Heaven. Please come inside." Tian Qiyuan nodded and followed her to her world. Much like Senior Bei's realm, accessible through the myriad of techniques, Zi Xuan's world resided in a separate dimension, far removed from the 9th heaven. But compared to Senior Bei's somewhat empty realm, which consisted entirely of flying pavilions, Zi Xuan's world was a realm of countless swords and a single floating island that housed a solitary building. The swords hovered in the air like scattered clouds, forming a path that led to the building in the distance. As Tian Qiyuan followed Zi Xuan, he inspected the swords with his divine sense. Their grades varied from spirit grade to Empyrean grade, yet one thing remained consistent: their excellent quality, all being peak quality swords. This is a unique way to display your collection. It's an impressive collection as well. Tian Qiyuan casually commented on it. To his surprise, Zi Xuan said, "I'm not actually displaying them. They used to be stored in my vault, but after I learned of the existence of your swords and acquired one for my collection, I couldn't bear to keep them in the same space. So I tossed them out here." "Is that so?" Tian Qiyuan mumbled, unsure whether to feel honored by her appreciation for his creations or to sympathize with the unknown maker of the sword she had discarded in such a fashion because of him. Upon reaching the island, Zi Xuan led him straight to the building and said, "This is my private living quarters. You're the first one ever to visit this place." To bring me to such a personal place even though we're practically strangers. I feel honored. I don't see you as a stranger, she quickly said. I have collected many of your swords and spent many years with them. They say a blacksmith's creation embodies a fragment of their creator's soul, so in a way we've known each other for a very long time. The next moment they stepped into the building. Its interior was opulent yet understated, exuding a sense of luxury without extravagance. The atmosphere was cozy with a natural soothing aura permeating the air. Though the building appeared sizable from the outside, it housed only a small living room and a bedroom, with the remainder of the space dedicated to her extensive sword collection, at least before most of them were tossed out and replaced by Tian Qiyuan's swords. Please have a seat. Zi Xuan gestured at the couch by the purple-fired fireplace. Once they were both seated, Tian Qiyuan asked, So, what kind of sword do you want me to make for you? I will let you decide. Are you sure? She nodded solemnly and spoke, I commissioned you not out of necessity but out of desire. I do not wish to defile your creation with my ideas, so I don't care what I want. Just like your other creations, I want this sword crafted solely by you, but I want you to think of me when you make it. Despite Zi Xuan's enigmatic demeanor, Tian Qiyuan accepted her request with determination. I understand. I will craft a sword that I believe will be perfect for you, and I will only think of you during the process, he affirmed. Although Tian Qiyuan was wearing a mask, Zi Xuan could feel his intense stare through the mask. Additionally, when the words that she would only hear in her dreams were uttered in reality by the person in her dreams, a profound change occurred within her, causing her body to tremble in delight. Zi Xuan's breath quickened, and her eyes locked onto Tian Qiyuan with a deep sense of yearning. Should I just make him mine right here and now? She pondered inwardly. Little did Tian Qiyuan know, Zi Xuan was an ardent admirer of his creations to extreme levels. Despite possessing numerous Empyrean-grade and even Celestial-grade swords, Zi Xuan had found herself utterly charmed by one of Tian Qiyuan's creations, despite it being only of spirit-grade quality at the time. Such was the allure of his craftsmanship that it transcended the boundaries of material worth, capturing her heart with its unique charm. As Tian Qiyuan's skill refined and his creations became even more exquisite with each creation, Zi Xuan's admiration for his work only deepened. Eventually, her infatuation soon morphed into a dangerous obsession, reaching a point where she was willing to go to extreme lengths, even resorting to violence to obtain his coveted creations. Her crazed obsession quickly earned her the nickname of Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic. However, since she was always disguised, nobody knew her true identity as the sword goddess. If the world somehow learned of this, not even the heavens would be able to predict their reaction. Zi Xuan was an expert at the 7th level of the God Ascension realm, while Tian Qiyuan was only a golden immortal. If she were to force herself upon him in this secluded world, there was nothing he could do about it. However, Zi Xuan quickly regained control of her emotions and refrained from doing something so barbaric for now. Now then, can you tell me more about yourself? For example, your hobbies, your likes and dislikes, and even habits. I will also need to examine your swordsmanship later. Tian Qiyuan said to her a moment later, unaware of the dangerous thoughts flowing through Zi Xuan's mind. With pleasure. Zi Xuan responded with a profound smile on her beautiful face. Chapter 1511 Zi Xuan. Chapter 1511 Zi Xuan 1511 Zi Xuan. Upon Tian Qiyuan's request to learn more about her, Zi Xuan did not hesitate to reveal everything about herself to him, including personal information that one usually wouldn't reveal even to their loved ones. I enjoy reading scriptures every now and then, and my hobby is collecting swords. I haven't eaten anything in the last 100 years, but if I were to eat something right now, it would be a spicy dish. I like swords, and there are too many things I dislike to list, but if I had to name a few, it would be pesky people and men who only think with their lower swords. I don't mind perverted men as I am quite perverted myself, but there is a difference between lustful and being lecherous. When I am feeling lustful, I like to use the swords in my collection to relieve myself. By the way, your swords are the best. They make me go crazy, something other swords cannot replicate. Behind his mask, Tian Qiyuan's eyes widened in surprise, his disbelief evident. Was she toying with him, or was she genuinely like this? He had always known Zi Xuan to be eccentric, but this was a whole new level. He cleared his throat and said, Why don't you tell me about your background? How did you grow up and become the person you are today? Zi Xuan pondered for a moment before responding, I was born in the Unrivaled Nine Swords sect. My mother was a sect elder, so I spent the majority of my life there. I touched my first sword when I was 1 year old and started training with one when I was only 5 years old. I learned sword aura 10 years later, enhanced sword aura after another 100 years, and attained sword body at 3,000 years old. I became an official disciple of the Unrivaled 9-Sword sect at 10 years old and was promoted to inner disciple 3 years later. On my 18th birthday I became a core disciple. 10 years later I became a sect elder. After another 50 years, I replaced one of the 9 unrivaled swords by defeating him in an official match. Since then I began working toward a level that surpasses enhanced sword aura. It took 100,000 years but I've managed to achieve just that and I named it Supreme Sword Aura. Oh, I started collecting swords when I was 16 years old. Tian Qiyuan listened to her history with interest. This was his first time encountering someone as talented as Zi Xuan when it came to the sword. To achieve a sword body at 2,000 years old was incredibly gifted, a talent seen once every 100 million years. After telling him her entire life story, Zi Xuan suddenly stood up and asked, "Want to see my sword collection? It's mostly your swords though." "Sure. It would help me understand your taste for swords a little more." Tian Qiyuan nodded and followed her to the collection. Sometime later they arrived before a sealed door. "I called this the sword vault and once again, you're the first person besides myself to see it." Zi Xuan removed the seal and opened the door, revealing the room on the other side. The room was huge, taking up most of the building, but fewer than 100 swords were on display, even though it could easily hold hundreds of thousands. "This room used to be more crowded, but as you saw they're all outside now," Zi Xuan said. Tian Qiyuan took a quick look at the swords with his divine sense. There were 79 swords on display with 69 of them being his own creation. "You've managed to collect 69 out of the 90 treasures I've sold to the public?" Tian Qiyuan marveled at her unwavering dedication and extraordinary collection. To obtain even a single treasure crafted by his hand was a formidable feat, yet she had amassed 69 of them as a single individual. He was aware of the high cost of his treasures, but he couldn't fathom the extent of resources she must have sacrificed to acquire these 69 weapons. "I never thought I would collect weapons that were not swords, but your creations changed me," Zi Xuan said as she caressed a blue-bladed dagger with her slender fingers. While some blacksmiths specialize in a single type of weapon since it's much easier to advance in their career, a true master crafts all kinds of weapons with equal excellence. Tian Qiyuan crafted every type of weapon, but his favorite was the sword. Thus, half of his creations were swords. Zi Xuan walked over to a particular sword on display and said, "This is the first of your creations that appeared in public, and it's the sword that changed my life." It was a mere spirit-grade sword, but it was just as flawless as the Violet Dream in terms of quality and could easily be mistaken as a heaven-grade, even divine-grade treasure. "When I first laid eyes on this sword, it made me feel emotions that I didn't know existed in me, and I knew I had to acquire it." She grabbed the sword off the display and handed it to Tian Qiyuan. "If you don't mind, can you hold it for me? I want to see it with its creator." Tian Qiyuan accepted her request and held the sword in his hand. Instantly, the sword began exuding an aura that had never manifested for anyone else, not even Zi Xuan. This left Zi Xuan bewildered. "Ah," she muttered in a trembling voice, her body shaking in excitement. "I have tried but I could never imagine it being any more perfect than it already is, but now, with it in your hands, this is true perfection." Zi Xuan exclaimed with a crazed expression on her face, as if a switch had been flipped inside her. She approached him and grabbed his hands. "I was only 99% convinced you were the real Exalted Blacksmith, but I am now 100% convinced." Chapter 15:12 Unrivaled Sword Art. Chapter 15:12 Unrivaled Sword Art. 15:12 Unrivaled Sword Art. "You weren't certain I was the real deal? What if I had been an imposter?" Tian Qiyuan asked her out of curiosity. Hearing this question, Zi Xuan's expression darkened, looking incredibly grim, and she responded in a chilling voice, "If you had dared to impersonate the Exalted Blacksmith, then I would have tortured you until the end of time." Her gaze exuded real killing intent that sent shivers down Tian Qiyuan's body. "All right then, let's take a look at your swordsmanship now," he said a moment later. Zi Xuan nodded her head and said, "Let's go outside." Before leaving the vault, Zi Xuan took the spirit-grade sword with her. Once they were outside, Zi Xuan brought him to the empty field behind the building. "I will now perform my main sword technique, Unrivaled Sword Arts. It consists of 9 stages, each several times stronger than the last." Instead of wielding a powerful sword like the Violet Dream, Zi Xuan opted to use the spirit-grade sword for her performance. She was more comfortable with it due to spending countless hours with it, allowing her to display her best abilities. Unrivaled Sword Art, First Stage Unrivaled Spirit. Zi Xuan then gave Tian Qiyuan a sword performance that could only be described as flawless, even otherworldly. Each movement was precise and fluid, flowing as naturally as water in a river, without a trace of hesitation or stiffness. After watching her otherworldly performance, Tian Qiyuan fully understood why people called her the Sword Goddess. Sometime later, Zi Xuan stopped after the third stage and asked him, "Are you able to understand my swordsmanship?" Once a swordsman attains a certain level of mastery, their movements transcend ordinary understanding, and this effect intensifies as the individual's skill level increases. Since Tian Qiyuan was mainly a blacksmith, Zi Xuan was worried that he lacked the ability to understand her swordsmanship, which would hinder his ability to craft a suitable sword that matched her abilities. Tian Qiyuan could tell what was on Zi Xuan's mind based on the worried frown on her face, and he said, "Don't worry, I can understand your swordsmanship. I may be a blacksmith, but I am also a sword master. In order to create a weapon, I believe you must understand the weapon itself first, and what better way to understand a weapon than to master it?" Some of Zi Xuan's worries went away after hearing his words, but there was still some doubt in her heart. After all, to fully comprehend her swordsmanship, Tian Qiyuan would need to be near her level or even surpass it, which was very unlikely. However, she didn't say anything else and continued her performance. This is the fourth stage, Unrivaled Earth. Then the fifth stage, Unrivaled Heaven. The sixth stage, Unrivaled Divine. The seventh stage, Unrivaled Saint. She stopped after the seventh stage to look at Tian Qiyuan again. "Are you still following?" "Yes, 100%. Despite her profound respect for him, she couldn't bring herself to believe his words. Not even the other 8 unrivaled swords could claim with such certainty that they comprehended the seventh stage of her swordsmanship. Seeing the doubt on her face, Tian Qiyuan said, "Just keep going. I'll prove to you that I am capable of understanding your swordsmanship later." Zi Xuan silently nodded and proceeded to perform the 8th stage. Unrivaled Void. Finally, the last stage. This is the 9th stage, Unrivaled Sword God. There was a saying in the Unrivaled Nine-Sword sect, mastering the 9th stage of their technique would inevitably make one a sword god. And within the entire sect, only Zi Xuan has managed to reach such a level. It was widely known within their sect that Zi Xuan surpassed even the sect master in power. However, she had no desire to shoulder the responsibilities of leadership, and thus she chose not to ascend to the position, remaining as a guardian of the sect. As Zi Xuan commenced the final stage, the atmosphere in their secluded world shifted, and the very air trembled in awe. If Zi Xuan had infused her spiritual energy into her swordsmanship, their world would have been destroyed long before she could even reach the 5th stage, much less the 9th stage. "What do you think?" Zi Xuan asked him afterward while being slightly out of breath. Tian Qiyuan nodded. "It was amazing." "Are you saying that because you couldn't comprehend it, or?" Tian Qiyuan smiled and gestured for the sword. "As promised, I will now prove to you that I am fully capable of understanding your swordsmanship." Zi Xuan handed him the sword and asked, "What are you going to do?" "You'll see in just a moment. Please give me some space." Once Zi Xuan was far enough, Tian Qiyuan closed his eyes and recalled Zi Xuan's performance with the unrivaled sword art. After a moment of silence, he started moving his body and performing the unrivaled sword art. Zi Xuan's eyes widened in shock as she watched Tian Qiyuan flawlessly replicate her sect's most revered and challenging sword technique. However, as impressive as it seemed at a glance, anyone with enough experience could replicate the first 3 stages of the technique. A few minutes later, Tian Qiyuan began performing the 4th stage. His movements were just as impeccable as if he was still doing the first stage, leaving Zi Xuan speechless. However, little did she know that was just the beginning. After performing the 4th stage, Tian Qiyuan went on to the 5th stage and then the 6th stage. Even more remarkable than his effortless replication of the sword technique was Tian Qiyuan's seamless performance, flawlessly executing each stage without the slightest pause, almost as if had practiced the sword technique for thousands of years. As Tian Qiyuan reached the 9th stage of the sword technique, Zi Xuan fell back in shock, her expression mirroring disbelief as if she had seen a ghost. "Impossible," she uttered in a terrified voice, and she began doubting whether she was a true sword prodigy or a fake one. Chapter 1513 Exalted Blacksmith Store? Chapter 1513 Exalted Blacksmith Store 1513 Exalted Blacksmith Store? You? What the hell are you? Zi Xuan stared at Tian Qiyuan with her eyes as wide as saucers. It'd taken her thousands of years to master the unrivaled sword arts. Yet, it only took a glance for Tian Qiyuan to master the sword technique completely. She has never heard of anything like this before, much less witnessing it with her own eyes. Are you secretly a disciple of our unrivaled nine-sword sect? She asked with a suspicious look on her face. If he were truly a disciple of her sect, it would explain his knowledge of the unrivaled sword arts. However, even within her sect, fewer than 5 individuals had learned all 9 stages, and she was the only one to master all 9 stages. So, how could he flawlessly execute all 9 stages? No, I am not a disciple of the unrivaled nine-sword sect. Then are you telling me that you actually learned the technique on the spot after watching me perform it once? Do you really expect me to believe such a thing? I don't expect you to believe me, but that's the truth. Anyways, have I cleared your doubt about my ability to comprehend your swordsmanship? Don't try to change the subject. Only disciples of the unrivaled nine-sword sect are allowed to learn the sword technique. If they learn that an outsider has managed to do so, they'll hunt you down. That's only if they learn it, right? You're the only one who knows about it, so unless you tell them, I will be safe. Moreover, I learned the technique from watching you, who willingly showed it to me, so you also bear some responsibility. That's. Zi Xuan was left speechless by his argument. In fact, even if she knew that he had the capability to learn the technique beforehand, she would still be willing to perform the sword technique for him for the sake of her sword. She sighed in a defeated manner and said, You're right. Since you learned the sword technique from me, I am technically responsible for it. Anyway, I have no intention of revealing this to my sect, so you do your job and don't go around flaunting it. Tian Qiyuan smiled and said, I have no interest in the unrivaled sword arts. I have my own sword technique. Anyway, I have a good understanding of your capabilities, and I already have an image of what kind of sword I will be making for you. I just need some time to think about it. Will it take long? She asked. No, it'll be done in a few days. Okay. Then it'll begin now. He sat on the ground and closed his eyes. It looked like he was cultivating, but he was actually forging Zi Xuan's sword inside his mind, and he was doing it more than once. To craft the perfect sword for her, Tian Qiyuan needed to experiment with various materials and combinations. A blacksmith of his caliber possesses the ability to forge treasures within their mind as vividly as if they were doing it in reality. This extraordinary skill allows them to save both resources and time. Time passed in the blink of an eye for Tian Qiyuan. As for Zi Xuan, she sat right in front of him and stared at him the entire time. A few days later, when Tian Qiyuan opened his eyes, he was startled by Zi Xuan, whose face was so close to his mask that they were almost touching. Oh, I am finished, he said in a somewhat stiff voice. Realizing that had finished, Zi Xuan calmly distanced herself from him and asked, Why are you hiding your identity? I like peace and freedom. If the world knows my face, I will never be able to walk in public without being stopped by people, he calmly said. A fair reason. Anyway, I know exactly what kind of sword I'll make for you. He proceeded to write down a list of materials needed for the sword and handed it to her. How long do you think it'll take you to collect them? He asked. Zi Xuan looked at the list with a pondering face. After a moment of silence, she said, It shouldn't take too long. I already have half of these materials. I can probably acquire the other half in a few months. Then I'll return to the place that I came in here from exactly 1 year from now. Okay. What are you going to do in the meantime? What a blacksmith typically does. Make things. Tian Qiyuan left Zi Xuan's world shortly after and disappeared from the world for an entire year. News of the Exalted Blacksmith accepting commissions spread throughout the 9 heavens after the auction house. Many people wanted to request a commission immediately, but all of them quickly came to the same realization that stopped them from doing so. How the hell do we contact the Exalted Blacksmith when we don't even know his identity or where to find him? Indeed, Tian Qiyuan had departed the auction house so quickly that he forgot to mention the store he had opened in the 8th heaven, where he would be accepting requests. Tian Qiyuan found it weird that nobody approached him even though many months had passed, and he was beginning to doubt his own popularity. I forgot to tell them about this store. He suddenly came to this realization one day. Upon realizing his mistake, he immediately began spreading information about his store. Not even half a day after he began spreading the news, experts from around the world flocked to his store like hungry pigeons. His store was situated in the middle of nowhere, standing alone in an open, empty grassland. It was almost impossible to miss once someone entered its vicinity, but without knowledge of its existence, nobody would go out of their way to visit such a desolate place. However, once news of his store spread, the once empty grassland quickly became crowded with people. Chapter 1514 The Pinnacle of Swords. Chapter 1514 The Pinnacle of Swords 1514 The Pinnacle of Swords. Before people arrived at his store, Tian Qiyuan created a large sign that read, "Those who have my desired materials may enter the store immediately. Those who do not have priority must wait outside until their number is called." There are jade slips with numbers on it beside this sign. Take the number in the front and wait for your turn. I will have at most 10 customers at a time, excluding those with priority and with my desired materials. Every customer will only be allowed one commission request in their lifetime. Fighting is not allowed near the store, or you will be put on the blacklist. Those on the blacklist will not be able to receive my service. Those with a jade slip may sell their slot, but others are prohibited from threatening those with a jade slip to sell. If you pressure or force someone to sell their jade slip, you will be put on the blacklist. When the first customer arrived, he grabbed the jade slip that read 1 and waited for his turn. Seconds later, another individual showed up. In less than 1 minute, all 10 jade slips had been acquired with the people who came after feeling dejected. However, they didn't immediately leave and tried to purchase the jade slip from those who had one. Unsurprisingly, none of the 10 individuals with a slot were willing to sell it, so the others quickly gave up and waited for the next day's slots. Tian Qiyuan waited half a day for someone with his desired materials to show up. When nobody did, he called in the first customer. "What kind of weapon do you want?" Tian Qiyuan asked. "I would like a spear." "Do you have a specific design in mind?" "What about its grade and quality?" "I do. It's right here." "How much would it cost for one at the peak quality ancient grade?" After taking a look at the design, Tian Qiyuan gave the man an estimate of the price. "I understand. I have the money and materials right here. When will you begin the commission?" "I will start right now. You can expect the spear to be ready in an hour." "That fast?" The man almost couldn't believe his ears. Most blacksmiths would require months of work to craft an ancient-grade weapon after all. "Yes, it'll be done in an hour," Tian Qiyuan reaffirmed. The man nodded and left the store, which consisted of one small reception room and the rest being a smithy. An hour later, Tian Qiyuan called the man back into the store and showed him the finished product. "Amazing." The man was at a loss for words. "See, can I touch it?" he then asked. "That depends. Do you accept this result? If you do, you'll need to pay the full amount before you can have it." "I accept." The man retrieved the rest of the payment and handed it to Tian Qiyuan. "It's all yours." Tian Qiyuan gestured at the beautiful red spear. The man grabbed the spear with trembling hands and muttered, "This is exactly what I envisioned." "No, it's even better than I imagined." Tian Qiyuan then said, "It doesn't have a name yet, and that will be your responsibility." After completing his first commission, Tian Qiyuan walked outside and showed everyone the jade slip with the number 1 in his grasp and said, "If you want this, you can go get it." He proceeded to flick the jade slip, shooting it into the distance. Those who reacted the fastest were the first to chase after it, with the others following behind, quickly emptying the place beside the other 9 already with a jade slip. "Number 2, you may follow me inside," Tian Qiyuan said a moment later. Over the next several months, Tian Qiyuan focused on his commissions, amassing a tremendous amount of wealth. He also accepted several priority commissions from those who offered him the material that he was looking for. Once a year had passed since his meeting with Zi Xuan, Tian Qiyuan closed the store down temporarily. "If you already have a jade slip, you can keep it with you until I reopen the store." Tian Qiyuan disappeared after saying these words. He made his way to the same location as last time and waited for Zi Xuan to invite him to her world. Zi Xuan showed up shortly after his arrival, but she looked a little grumpy for some reason. "Is something wrong?" he asked her. "I thought I would be your first, but you ended up creating other treasures before mine even started," she said, displeased that she wasn't the first to have a custom weapon by him. "While I didn't complete your sword first, you are still my first customer, and your sword was my first custom design, so it's still technically my first custom creation," he said. Zi Xuan fell silent when she couldn't argue with his logic, eventually bringing him into her world. "Here are all of the materials you requested." Zi Xuan pointed at the materials neatly placed outside her living quarters. "Where are you going to make the weapon?" "4 mystic grade treasures. I have to do it inside my world," he said. "Oh, Do you think I can come watch? She asked out of curiosity, but she was prepared to be refused. Tian Qiyuan did not immediately respond and pondered for a moment. Seeing this as an opportunity, Zi Xuan quickly continued, I actually have another material that was on your list. I'll give it to you for free if you let me watch. Alright, I'll let you watch. Tian Qiyuan nodded. Why are you collecting so many precious materials anyway? Since you are my first customer, I'll tell you. Tian Qiyuan smiled behind his mask and said, I am planning on creating a masterpiece, a sword that surpasses even celestial-grade treasures. The pinnacle of all swords. The pinnacle of all swords? Zi Xuan swallowed nervously as she stared at him with a dazed expression on her face. Chapter 15:15 Tian Qiyuan's World. Chapter 15:15 Tian Qiyuan's World. 15:15 Tian Qiyuan's World. As a sword enthusiast, the mere mention of Tian Qiyuan's plan to craft the pinnacle of swords sent a thrill through Zi Xuan, igniting a spark of excitement in her. The fact that she was essentially giving him the resources to craft the weapon made it seem like she contributed to the creation of the sword. Imwet, she thought to herself with a euphoria expression on her face. Tian Qiyuan ignored the weird expression on Zi Xuan's face and collected the materials. I'm going to return to my world right now, but I won't begin the smithing for a few more days, he said afterward. I'll follow you there, she snapped out of it and said. Okay. They left Zi Xuan's world shortly after. A few days later, Tian Qiyuan arrived at the entrance to his world, which was located near a river in the middle of a mountain valley. Tian Qiyuan's world consisted of 3 areas. The first one to enter Zi Xuan's view was a floating island that had a majestic golden mountain and a golden waterfall. The next appeared to be a floating island with a volcano that appeared ordinary at a glance, but when Zi Xuan tried to take a deep look into it, she found an unfathomable existence living within. Unfortunately, this presence was too powerful for even an expert like Zi Xuan to perceive fully. Not wanting to offend such a formidable entity, she immediately withdrew her divine sense the moment she became aware of its existence. The third area was a simple floating island with 2 buildings. One appeared to be his living quarters and the other a smithy. You're the first human ever to visit this place. Tian Qiyuan suddenly said to her. The first human, huh? Zi Xuan glanced at the volcano. Do you want a tour of the place while we're here? He suddenly asked. Sure. Tian Qiyuan proceeded to lead Zi Xuan to the golden mountain with the waterfall and said, This entire mountain is made of primordial gold, and the water is all liquid from the golden celestial tree that you see growing around the river. Sure enough, dozens of golden celestial trees were growing along the river, each of them at least 1,000,000 years old. A single golden celestial tree could sell for the price of several mystic-grade treasures. This is the first time I've seen so many golden celestial trees in one place. Zi Xuan swallowed nervously at the marvelous sight. However, they still weren't as impressive as the golden mountain that was completely made of primordial gold. Primordial gold was more valuable than Empyrean gold, and a small fist-sized chuck could easily sell for the price of a mystic-grade treasure. Yet, there was a whole mountain of it in Tian Qiyuan's world. Why do you need so much primordial gold and golden celestial tree? Zi Xuan asked him out of curiosity. I'll be using most of it for my masterpiece, he calmly said. And most of it? You can easily craft a dozen celestial-grade treasures with this much material, she exclaimed in shock. Even if it can craft 100 celestial-grade treasures, it wouldn't be able to compare to my masterpiece. Tian Qiyuan said in a confident tone. Just what kind of sword are you trying to craft? Do you intend on slaying gods or something? Zi Xuan shook her head. Since she didn't have any idea what kind of sword he was creating, she couldn't help but consider it a waste of resources. Let's head to the next island. By the way, I call this place the Golden Valley. Tian Qiyuan led her to the second island with the volcano, but he didn't enter its territory and merely inspected it from outside. You should have already noticed its existence by now, but I do not live in this world alone. My companion isn't human either. It resides inside the mountain, where all sorts of precious ores and jewelry can be found, especially those that grow in extremely hot conditions. What kind of entity lives here? Since it can withstand the immense heat in this place, it's most likely a yang element beast, right? Zi Xuan inquired. Indeed, it's a yang element beast. I would introduce you now, but it only comes out when I work on profound treasures that require unique flames. That said, you'll meet it once I begin working on your sword. It even assists you with your creation? I cannot imagine what kind of beast has the capabilities to do that. With that said, Zi Xuan could think of one entity that could produce flames, but it seemed so far-fetched that she didn't even consider it possible and quickly tossed that thought aside. Since he didn't want to disturb the entity any longer, Tian Qiyuan led Zi Xuan to the final island. Omicron, this is my living quarter, and the other building is my workshop. Tian Qiyuan said, confirming Zi Xuan's speculations earlier. He invited her into his living quarters and served her tea. As she sipped on the tea, Zi Xuan's eyes remained fixated on Tian Qiyuan's mask. When her curiosity could no longer be contained, she asked him, "Would you be willing to show me your face? I promise I won't tell anyone. I can even swear on my soul if that would reassure you." Without waiting for Tian Qiyuan's response, Zi Xuan raised her hand and swore, "With heaven as my witness, I swear upon my soul that I would not reveal your identity to anyone you don't want me to." "You didn't have to do that. I would have shown you my face even without needing the oath, but it does make it more easy for me to reveal my face." Tian Qiyuan wasn't worried that she might recognize him because his true identity, besides being the Exalted Blacksmith, was a nobody who belonged to no background. He removed his mask the following moment, revealing his handsome face to Zi Xuan. Chapter 15-16 Vulgar Presence. Chapter 15-16 Vulgar Presence. 15-16 Vulgar Presence. "You're much more handsome than I expected," Zi Xuan muttered in a dazed voice as she stared at Tian Qiyuan's handsome face. She had braced herself in case Tian Qiyuan had an ugly face because he always wore a mask. Even though he claimed that it was because he didn't want to be recognized in public, there was no way to really tell if he was being truthful. However, after seeing his handsome facial features, Zi Xuan no longer doubted his claims of wanting to remain anonymous. In fact, he was so handsome that Zi Xuan subconsciously reached for his face, gently caressing his cheeks. Tian Qiyuan would have been able to avoid it if it was a surprise attack, but Zi Xuan's actions were so random that he simply froze from bewilderment, which allowed her to caress his cheeks. Sorry? My hands moved on its own just now." Zi Xuan quickly pulled back her hand once she realized what she was doing and slightly blushed. Tian Qiyuan chuckled and responded in a joking manner, "It's fine. I don't blame you as I am very handsome after all." He continued, "Anyway, he'll be spending the next several days preparing the materials, so until then make yourself at home. To ensure the process goes as smoothly as possible, all of the materials are typically refined or combined before the weapon crafting begins. You don't mind me taking a look around? Aren't you worried that I might steal from you?" Zi Xuan asked. He chuckled at her words and said, "Unless you want to provoke my neighbor, I don't see why you would do such a thing." Zi Xuan's gaze shifted to the volcano and smiled. "Then he'll have some fun in your living quarters." Zi Xuan entered his living quarters the next moment while Tian Qiyuan immediately began refining the materials. Upon entering Tian Qiyuan's home, Zi Xuan immediately began exploring the place. It was a simple home with 4 rooms. There was a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom. The atmosphere resembled that of a mortal home since immortal cultivators did not need to use the bathroom or eat. The living room was simply furnished with a leather chair, framed displays on the walls showcasing precious materials that even Zi Xuan did not recognize, and a fireplace. The bathroom and kitchen looked ordinary. Zi Xuan visited Tian Qiyuan's bedroom last. Once she was inside, she took a deep breath through her nose and mouth at the same time. She kept the air in her lungs for a long moment before breathing out again. "What a wonderful smell," Zi Xuan muttered as she focused her gaze on the bed in the corner. Then, without hesitation, she jumped on the bed and started rolling around like some kind of bug. Why am I so attracted to him? Is it because he can craft amazing swords? No, there's something more to him, but I cannot pinpoint it. Zi Xuan's excitement continued to rise as she lay on his bed. Eventually, she could no longer control herself and reached underneath her clothes and started playing with herself. Meanwhile, Tian Qiyuan was completely focused on the materials and did not even bother to check on Zi Xuan. Days passed in the blink of an eye. Once he was finished with the preparations, Tian Qiyuan went inside his home to call Zi Xuan. He quickly found her sleeping peacefully on his bed with a satisfied expression on her face. There was also a unique smell in the air that he did not recognize. Tian Qiyuan went to wake her up after staring at the sleeping beauty for a brief moment. Zi Xuan slowly opened her eyes to see Tian Qiyuan standing before her. "Are we going for another round?" she muttered in a dazed voice, almost as if she believed that she was still dreaming. "Another round of what?" Tian Qiyuan asked with raised eyebrows. Zi Xuan quickly realized that she was no longer dreaming and swiftly sat up. "Nothing," she responded in a stiff voice. "I'm going to start crafting the weapon now, so come with me," he then said. Omicron Zi Xuan nodded and fixed her robes before following him outside. She thought they were going to enter the smithy, but Tian Qiyuan went behind it, where a gold anvil was located. "We'll be doing it out here since we'll be using unique flames," he said. "For your safety, please watch from outside the island." Zi Xuan nodded and flew away, stopping right outside the island. Tian Qiyuan proceeded to remove the upper part of his robes, revealing his otherworldly physique that had been refined to perfection. Zi Xuan nearly began drooling upon seeing his bare upper body. "Feng Feng." Tian Qiyuan suddenly called out. Zi Xuan's expression immediately stiffened when the unfathomable presence she sensed from the volcano returned. She turned to gaze at the island just as the volcano erupted. From the fiery chaos, a colossal figure emerged, its flaming wings unfurling to shroud half the sky. "A phoenix?" Zi Xuan cried out loud. She had initially speculated the beast to be a phoenix when she first heard about it, but the likelihood of a phoenix collaborating with a human seemed so improbable that she dismissed it as a mistake. "What kind of phoenix is it? I have seen phoenixes before, but none of them were covered in golden flames like this one. Its presence is also incomparably stronger." Zi Xuan pondered inwardly as the phoenix flew to Tian Qiyuan, hovering above the entire island like a roof. "He'll be relying on you again for the next few days, Feng Feng," Tian Qiyuan said. The phoenix did not respond, its gaze fixed intently on Zi Xuan. Zi Xuan's entire being trembled upon sensing its stare. She had a feeling that she was not being regarded favorably. "You are dirtying our sacred home with your vulgar presence, human." A cold voice suddenly resounded in Zi Xuan's head. It was undoubtedly the phoenix's voice, but Zi Xuan could not respond. She feared that it might obliterate her if she did. Chapter 15-17 Feng Feng. Chapter 15-17 Feng Feng 15-17 Feng Feng. "Not only did you disturb my slumber, you even dared to dirty his room with your filthy bodily fluid. I should turn you into roasted meat." The phoenix continued, even threatening to kill her. Zi Xuan eventually snapped out of her daze and gritted her teeth before responding, as if a beast would understand human love. "Once we become lovers, I will dirty his room with my bodily fluid every day." The phoenix's golden flames suddenly flared up, turning it into a bright sun that colored the entire world golden. "You and I cannot coexist. One of us will perish today, and it will be you." It screamed in a chilling voice, causing the entire world to tremble. Seeing this, Tian Qiyuan spoke up, "Don't be rude to our guest, Feng Feng." After a moment of silence, the phoenix slowly calmed down. Yet, Zi Xuan could still feel its killing intent being directed at her. "Feng Feng." Tian Qiyuan called her out again. "Humph." The phoenix eventually stopped caring about Zi Xuan. Zi Xuan's entire back was soaked in sweat after her confrontation with the phoenix. Seeing her nervous expression, Tian Qiyuan said, "Her name's Feng Qianru, but I call her Feng Feng since it has a nice ring to it. She was just a baby phoenix when I first found her and she was injured, so I treated her. Since then she's been following me like a pet. I think we were destined to meet." "Don't call me a pet," Feng Qianru shouted at him. "As you have experienced yourself, her temper is as fiery as her body of flames." Tian Qiyuan chuckled. "Anyway, enough chit-chat. There's a lot of work to be done. Feng Feng, let's get started." Tian Qiyuan walked to the anvil before using Qi manifestation to place one of the materials on it. He retrieved a black and golden hammer and said, "Whenever you're ready." A few moments later, Feng Qianru flapped her wings, spewing a waterfall of golden flames not just on the anvil but on Tian Qiyuan's figure as well, engulfing him in flames. "What the foo?" Zi Xuan's heart nearly jumped out of her chest when she saw this scene. However, she quickly realized that Tian Qiyuan was unharmed when she started hearing the sound of a hammer striking metal. Clang, clang, clang. A rhythmic sound filled the world with ripples appearing after every sound. Before Zi Xuan realized it, her heartbeat had synchronized with the rhythm of Tian Qiyuan's hammering, filling her very existence with a sense of harmony. Feng Qianru continued to shower Tian Qiyuan and the anvil with golden flames. A few hours later, Tian Qiyuan moved another material to the anvil without stopping his hammer even a split second. 10 hours, 20 hours, 50 hours, Zi Xuan stood transfixed, her eyes glued to Tian Qiyuan's handsome figure, her heart swelling with a sense of wonder as the hours ticked by. 7 days passed in a blur, and the sound of metal being hammered never stopped. Not even for a second. "You can stop now," Tian Qiyuan said to Feng Qianru, who immediately stopped producing flames for the first time in 7 days. Once the flames dispersed and Tian Qiyuan's figure emerged, his entire body was drenched in sweat, but there was not a single injury on his body. In fact, his physique looked even better than before. He turned to look at Zi Xuan, who looked like she was on the verge of lunging at him like a rabbit in heat. If it weren't for Feng Tianra's presence that kept her sanity in check, she would have definitely defiled every inch of his body. Your sword is done. Tian Qiyuan extended the sword in her direction, its gleaming blade held steady in his hand. Zi Xuan hastened to his side, her eyes flickering at the sight of the weapon as she hesitated, reluctant to touch it, her gaze lingering on its beauty. The sword radiated an aura of a peak-quality mystic-grade treasure, but its aura was so intense that Zi Xuan initially believed it to be an Empyrean-grade treasure. Its potency was so overwhelming that it eclipsed her usually sharp senses. This sword will increase the potency of all your sword techniques, especially the unrivaled sword art. Its blade was forged with naturally poisonous materials. While it won't kill your opponent, it will paralyze them, and depending on their cultivation, it may be indefinite. It's also incredibly durable, near indestructible. Only a peak-quality celestial-grade treasure would be able to damage it, and even that requires tremendous effort. Go ahead and give it a few swings. Zi Xuan's eyes locked onto the sword as she nodded, her hands moving with precision as she began performing the first 3 stages of the unrivaled sword art. The moment she did, she felt a profound improvement in her technique, as if the sword's energy had awakened a deeper connection within her, and her movements became more fluid and effortless than she had ever imagined possible. The sensation was so intoxicating that Zi Xuan found herself unable to stop. Her fingers moved with a life of their own as she seamlessly transitioned from the 3rd stage to the next, each subsequent step revealing a deeper understanding of the technique as if the sword was guiding her through the motions, her proficiency growing with each passing moment. Once she finished her performance, Zi Xuan's gaze remained fixated on the sword, seemingly unable to take her eyes off it. What do you think? Do you like it? Tian Qiyuan suddenly asked. Zi Xuan finally stopped looking at the sword and shifted her gaze to him. With a beautiful smile, she nodded her head and said, I love it. Then I will mark this commission fulfilled. Zi Xuan retrieved the rare materials he wanted and gave them to him as payment. What else from the list are you missing? She asked. He showed her the list and said, this many. All right. I'll help you find them for more swords. You want more already? Am I not allowed to have more? She raised an eyebrow. You can request as many commissions as you want as long as you bring me one of the listed materials. Otherwise, I am only creating 1 weapon for every individual. I understand. I was planning on doing that anyway, Zi Xuan said. Chapter 1518 Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic. Chapter 1518 Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic. 1518 Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic. After Zi Xuan left Tian Qiyuan's world, she returned to her sect with her new sword, which she named Heaven's Intoxication due to how every sword crafted by Tian Qiyuan inevitably makes her feel heated and dazed, almost as though she was intoxicated. The first thing she did when she returned to the Unrivaled 9-sword sect was to test the sword on someone, so she challenged another unrivaled sword to a match. Despite the reluctance of the individual she chose to spar with, there was no room for refusal. The power and authority Zi Xuan commanded was undeniable, and he knew that she would not hesitate to attack him if he dared to refuse. Wait. What in heaven's name is that sword? Her opponent was immediately taken aback by the sword's overwhelming presence in Zi Xuan's grasp, a presence that seemed to radiate with a life of its own. Heaven's Intoxication. It's my new favorite sword, she calmly said. Ignoring the weird name, where did you acquire such a marvelous treasure? Exalted Blacksmith, she replied, her voice carrying a sense of pride. Oh, I remember now. You won that auction a year ago with our sect's resources. Do you have any idea how much that hurt our finances? That amount could have supported our sect for another 150,000 years. The sect master would still cry even at the slightest mention of it. Stop complaining. I only borrowed it, so I plan on paying it back. After all, it wouldn't truly be mine if I used another's wealth to buy it. Zi Xuan said in a nonchalant voice. And how do you plan on doing that? Even if you sold your body, it wouldn't cover half of the costs. I will be visiting the primordial chaos shortly to familiarize myself with Heaven's Intoxication by hunting chaotic beasts. The primordial chaos. That's reckless behavior even by your standards. Do you have any idea how many God Ascension Realm cultivators perished in that place? You're worried about me? I don't need it. I'm worried that the debt you owe to the sect will disappear with your pointless death. That's none of your business. Anyway, let's get started. I have a lot of work to do. After another warning, Zi Xuan attacked her opponent. The fight was incredibly one-sided, with Zi Xuan dominating her opponent. Their spar lasted half as long as it typically does, and after the spar, Zi Xuan immediately left the sect to start earning money at the primordial chaos, one of the most dangerous places in the supreme heaven. Meanwhile, Tian Qiyuan continued to accept commissions for the next decade. Once his fame had reached its peak and his reputation was unshakable, Tian Qiyuan stopped accepting normal commissions and only accepted commissions from those who could provide him with rare materials. Although this sudden change upset many individuals, nobody dared complain, as it was already a miracle that he had accepted commissions from pretty much anybody with enough money for the last decade. In the last decade, Tian Qiyuan managed to acquire 7 more of the materials he needed for his masterpiece. However, he still needed dozens of materials and it could take hundreds, if not thousands, of years before he had enough material to finally craft his masterpiece. Zi Xuan returned to her sect after spending 50 years straight hunting chaotic beasts from the primordial chaos. With the number of chaotic beasts she slew, she acquired a tremendous amount of fortune from selling the chaotic beasts' materials. However, a majority of her earnings went to pay back her debt to the Unrivaled Nine-Sword sect. Then, with the rest of her money, she spent it on hiring scouts to search the 9 heavens for the materials Tian Qiyuan needed. If the materials were available, she would have spent it on purchasing them directly, but Tian Qiyuan could have done that already. Eventually, she found several individuals who had one of these materials, but none of them were for sale. Knowing that Tian Qiyuan had tried and failed, Zi Xuan opted to acquire them through other means. Thus, the Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic, who hasn't appeared in over 50 years, started causing havoc around the 9 heavens once again. Fuck. Why are you doing this? Did the Exalted Blacksmith send you to rob me because I refused to sell it to him? One of her victims cried out loud. No, I am doing this on my own accord because I find it ridiculous. The only thing ridiculous here is your existence. Why are you hogging the material even though you don't plan on using it? Frankly, it's a waste of resources. If you ask me, it should be given to the Exalted Blacksmith, who will refine them into their purest form and craft the most beautiful treasures out of it. This is a warning to the others. Either sell your materials and let them serve their purpose or let me take them from you. I recommend the former since it'll earn you some money at the very least. The Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic's warning would spread throughout the world like wildfire, terrifying the other collectors who had refused to sell their material. When Tian Qiyuan heard the news, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. I don't know who this fanatic of mine is, but I truly appreciate it. While he wouldn't stoop to the level of theft, he had no issue with someone doing it for him as long as he didn't personally encourage it. He also agreed with the fanatic's words and believed that materials should serve their purpose instead of collecting dust. After another 20 years, Zi Xuan appeared before him with a material that was on his list. I'm here for my second sword. She greeted him with a wide smile. It only took a glance for Tian Qiyuan to immediately recognize the material she brought as one of the materials he had failed to purchase. So you're the Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic, huh? He smiled after coming to this realization. Chapter 1519 Divine Blacksmith. Chapter 1519 Divine Blacksmith 1519 Divine Blacksmith, Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic? Are you suggesting a connection between me and that enigmatic figure? What led you to such a conclusion? Zi Xuan swiftly retorted, her innocence a well-crafted facade. So you're not the Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic? How did you acquire that material, then? I can remember and identify any material I've seen once, and that piece of cold stellar iron was stolen from Gu Gumming a few years ago. Tian Qiyuan spoke in a calm voice. Is that so? I had no idea. I acquired this from the black market last month. So it was stolen by the Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic, huh? A fascinating revelation, but does it truly matter where it originated? It's in your possession now. Zi Xuan's words flowed as smoothly as her breath. Seeing how stubborn she was to keep her identity a secret, Tian Qiyuan no longer tried to expose her and said, You're right. It doesn't matter where it came from. Zi Xuan was slightly taken aback by how readily he accepted the situation. She was certain that he had a strict policy against accepting stolen materials, a rule that would have challenged her persuasive skills. But she was relieved that it wasn't the case. You're a lot more open-minded than I'd anticipated. I know many blacksmiths who would not craft anything with materials acquired through unethical means, she expressed her surprise. Would you rather I not accept the material, then? It's not like I don't have any standards or pride. I obviously won't steal anything myself, but how another individual acquires their material is none of my business. Of course, I'm not encouraging such actions either. Moreover, how can one tell for sure their material wasn't acquired through unethical means? In the cultivation world, where the pursuit of power and longevity often led to questionable ethics, murder was a common occurrence. Given this, Tian Qiyuan's acceptance of the stolen material was hardly unusual. For him, it was just another aspect of the cutthroat world he lived in. Anyway, what kind of sword do you want this time? Tian Qiyuan asked. I don't know, so I'll let you decide. The same grade? How many materials would it take for you to craft an Empyrean grade treasure? She asked. Well, I'll need at least 5. However, I have yet to craft one, so you'll need to wait a little longer if you really want one. 5, huh? All right. I have 4 here. Zi Xuan retrieved 3 more materials. Naturally, all of them were stolen from their owners in the last few years. Let me guess, you got them from the black market? Tian Qiyuan smiled at her nonchalant action. Yep. It was sold to me as a bundle, she calmly nodded with an innocent smile on her face. Give me 100 years. They'll become a divine blacksmith by then. Okay. I'll look for more materials in the meantime. Zi Xuan left shortly afterward. Although she wanted to stay a little longer, she didn't want to delay his promotion to divine blacksmith even for a second. After Zi Xuan left, Tian Qiyuan immediately began working toward Empyrean-grade treasures inside his world. Most blacksmiths struggle to advance to the next level due to a lack of materials. Crafting treasures requires a significant amount of resources, which can be expensive, especially high-grade treasures that require rare materials. Even recycling the materials afterward isn't enough to create something new, making it a major hurdle for those seeking to upgrade. However, Tian Qiyuan didn't have to worry about lacking rare resources since his world had an abundance of them. This is also how he managed to become a grand blacksmith in just a few thousand years, while most would take hundreds of thousands of years to reach that level. While Tian Qiyuan entered seclusion to focus on his craft, Zi Xuan returned to collecting materials for him as the Exalted Blacksmith Fanatic. Her existence has become such a menace that people form alliances and groups to hunt her down. However, Zi Xuan wasn't one of the strongest cultivators in the world for nothing. Even without revealing her true strength, she could easily deal with any adversaries. 100 years later, Tian Qiyuan emerged from his seclusion to auction off his newest creation and to let the world know of his advancements. Did you hear? The Exalted Blacksmith has finally created an Empyrean-grade treasure, officially becoming a divine blacksmith. Heavens, he's a divine blacksmith already? Had become a grand blacksmith not too long ago. How the hell is he progressing so fast? I call bullshit. There's no way that's possible. It's true. He's auctioning off his Empyrean-grade treasure as we're speaking. At the auction, Tian Qiyuan gave a quick speech before the battle, just like previously. Although I've managed to craft an Empyrean-grade treasure, I can only do swords at the moment, so I do not consider myself a real divine blacksmith just yet. I will wait until I can craft other weapons of similar quality before I dare claim that title. His humble demeanor left a favorable impression on many blacksmiths, including the divine blacksmiths out there. And once again I will accept a personal commission from the winner of this auction. Omicronim. Once Tian Qiyuan left, the auction began shortly after. The auction for the Empyrean-grade treasure was a frenzied mess, even more chaotic than the last Mystic-grade auction. Sure enough, Zi Xuan was at this auction as well. Unfortunately, there were too many powerhouses present in this auction and she was unable to win this auction due to a lack of funds. While she had managed to win the last auction, it was mostly due to the treasure being mere Mystic grade, and most of the truly wealthy bidders already possessed Empyrean grade and above treasures, so they weren't as willing as her to spend a fortune on it. In the end, the ancestor of the Holy Sword Monastery won the bid. Zi Xuan was frustrated that she lost, but she did not despair as there were opportunities to acquire it in the future. In their world, upgrading weapons was a common practice, but advancing weapon grades was a more challenging task. The process required a high level of skill and craftsmanship, as well as a deep understanding of the materials and techniques involved. Only the most experienced and skilled blacksmiths could successfully advance a weapon's grade without significantly altering its original appearance and abilities. As the grade of a weapon increased, the process of advancing it to the next level became progressively more challenging. In fact, only the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, one of the top blacksmiths in the world, has managed to advance a divine grade treasure to ancient grade before. Advancing mystic grade to Empyrean grade was literally unheard of and deemed impossible by even divine blacksmiths. Yet, Tian Qiyuan claimed that he had the ability without any hesitation in his voice. Seeing the doubt and hesitation on Zi Xuan's face, Tian Qiyuan spoke, "If I mess it up, I'll make you the exact same sword free of charge as well as the Empyrean grade sword. Deal." All of Zi Xuan's hesitation was tossed out of the window after getting insurance for her sword. "What materials do you need from me?" she asked as they approached his living quarters. He pointed at the Golden Valley and said, "I already have them." "But those are your materials." "I know. Consider it part of the deal. You're giving me 5 materials after all. Also, it's easier to upgrade a sword than to create a new one." "It's easier to advance a sword than create one?" "If other blacksmiths could hear your voice right now, they would be coming at you with their hammers raised, you know." Zi Xuan almost couldn't believe what she had just heard. Tian Qiyuan silently smiled at her words. Once they arrived at the anvil, he extended his hand and said, "Let me borrow your sword." "All right." Zi Xuan handed him the Heaven's Intoxication. "It'll be done in a few hours." Feng. When Feng Qianru emerged from the volcano, Zi Xuan hastily left the island, fearing that Feng Qianru would engulf her in flames. Sure enough, Feng Qianru started spewing flames long before she even reached the island. That fucking phoenix really wanted to burn me. Zi Xuan cursed inwardly after seeing this. However, Feng Qianru didn't even spare her a gaze and focused on working with Tian Qiyuan. A few hours later, Tian Qiyuan revealed the new and improved Heaven's Intoxication with barely any changes to its appearance at a glance. "Heavens, you really advanced it from Mystic grade to Empyrean grade." Zi Xuan was bewildered by the results. If the world were to find out Tian Qiyuan could advance weapon grades like this, his fame and reputation would pierce the heavens. "Satisfied?" he asked her. "Yes." Zi Xuan wielded the sword in her grasp. While it felt the same as before, she sensed a much more profound energy coursing through it, allowing her to channel her own energy with far greater ease. "Thank you for the business again." Tian Qiyuan smiled. Chapter 1521 Success Rate. Chapter 1521 Success Rate 1521 Success Rate. "So, when do you think you'll start crafting celestial grade treasures?" Zi Xuan asked Tian Qiyuan shortly after putting away her sword. "You're asking me that when I just achieved Empyrean grade not long ago? It'll probably take me thousands of years before I can achieve celestial grade." "Only thousands of years? You're actually more arrogant than I thought." Zi Xuan looked at him with wide eyes. There were around 7 divine blacksmiths in the 9 heavens at their current time, not including Tian Qiyuan. All 7 of them are considered prodigies in their field of expertise, yet it took all of them hundreds of thousands of years to reach the level of celestial grade treasure. In order to be acknowledged as the god of creation, one must be able to craft celestial grade treasures and have at least a 25% success rate when doing so. The blacksmith with the highest success rate at this moment was Eternal Blacksmith, who has an incredible 15% success rate after almost 500,000 years of being a divine blacksmith. The next highest success rate was 10% by Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, who had 300,000 years of experience under his belt as a divine blacksmith. "By the way, what's your success rate with Mystic grade treasures?" Even Eternal Blacksmith only has a 70% success rate. "I've never failed before, so I guess 100%. "Why you what?" Zi Xuan's eyes widened with disbelief at his ridiculous claims. "I have crafted over 100 Mystic grade treasures by now and have not failed once. In fact, I've never destroyed a treasure before." That's literally impossible," Zi Xuan exclaimed. "I always craft the treasure in my head first, and I won't begin if I cannot guarantee its success. If you don't believe me, I have nothing else to say. Or do you want me to prove myself by crafting a dozen Mystic grade treasures for you?" Tian Qiyuan casually shrugged. Zi Xuan swallowed nervously. She really wanted to believe him, but this claim was simply too hard to believe. If another blacksmith were here to hear such claims, they would laugh their asses off and immediately brand him as a liar and crazy, regardless of his prior fame and reputation. "All right, I'll believe you," Zi Xuan eventually said. But she was not finished and continued, but I won't stop you if you want to prove yourself. Of course, even if you manage to prove yourself to me, it won't really mean anything since I am just a single individual. Moreover, I really don't care if you prove yourself or not since I already said I believe you. Tian Qiyuan remained silent for a moment before speaking. You can stay here a little longer if you want. I'm going to craft a few more Empyrean-grade treasures to solidify my foundation. Then I won't be humble. Zi Xuan, who was prepared to leave, immediately decided to stay a little longer. Tian Qiyuan quickly went back to work and started crafting his next Empyrean-grade treasure. However, he didn't immediately start the craft and instead sat down to cultivate. Why are you suddenly cultivating? Zi Xuan asked with a puzzled face. It helps me with my mental visualization, he said. What? Won't that have the opposite effect since cultivation requires more attention? Is that how it works for you? It works differently for me, I guess. Zi Xuan was speechless, and then she realized that he was speaking to her and cultivating at the same time, even acting very casually about it, like it was as natural as breathing. Just what kind of talent does he possess? It's too ridiculous, she thought to herself. Not wanting to disturb him, Zi Xuan silently watched him work over the next several months. Before he started working on the first treasure, he had spent 2 days practicing inside his mind. Once he started, his first Empyrean-grade treasure required almost 3 weeks to complete. The next one only took 2 weeks. After nearly 3 months of practice, he reduced that time to 1 week. However, his crafting speed wasn't anywhere near as ridiculous as his success rate. In 3 months, he crafted 5 Empyrean-grade treasures without failing a single one. Meanwhile, even the most experienced divine blacksmiths would fail at least 3 out of 5. Then, over the next 3 months, Tian Qiyuan made 12 Empyrean-grade treasures, succeeding in every attempt. In half a year, had successfully crafted 17 Empyrean-grade treasures without wasting any materials. If the world knew of his achievements, it wouldn't surprise Zi Xuan if people started declaring him to be the new god of creation even without needing to create any celestial-grade treasures first. What are you going to do with so many treasures? Sell them? I don't think the world is prepared to see 17 Empyrean-grade treasures half a year after you sold your first one. Zi Xuan said. I'm going to recycle them to make more treasures, he casually said. Seriously? That seems like such a waste of resources. Even if you can recycle 90% of its original material, you'll still lose 10% every time. You might as well sell it and use that money to buy more resources. Who knows, you might even make a profit. That will take too much time and effort. I'm fine even if I lose some resources. It's only natural after all. Sometime later, Zi Xuan said goodbye to Tian Qiyuan. It's about time for me to return to my sect. Thank you for letting me stay here to watch you train. It definitely opened my eyes and broadened my view. See you next time. Tian Qiyuan bid her farewell. Once Zi Xuan left, Tian Qiyuan reopened his store and returned to collecting materials while he continued to hone his skills. Zi Xuan would often visit him to chat or simply hang around him. Tian Qiyuan did not mind her company, even enjoying it. 500 years later, Zi Xuan suddenly appeared before him with this crucial information. Tian Qiyuan, I've found the void meteoroid core. Or more precisely, where to find it. They say it's at least 100 million years old, too. Hearing this, Tian Qiyuan halted whatever he was doing to look at her. Where? He asked with a serious expression. Chapter 1522 Void Meteoroid Core. Chapter 1522 Void Meteoroid Core 1522 Void Meteoroid Core. The Void Meteoroid Core is an extremely rare and sought-after material that Tian Qiyuan planned to use as one of the cores for his masterpiece. As its name implies, it originates from the Void Meteoroid, an indestructible rock that traverses the starry sky. Since it is indestructible, the only way to access the core, its most valuable part, is to wait for it to break down naturally until only its core remains. However, this process could take millions of years, and the longer it takes for the Void Meteoroid to complete it, the more valuable its core will be. The last time a Void Meteoroid core appeared in the world was 7 million years ago, igniting a war that spread across the starry sky. This time would be no different. I can take you to it, but there's already an ongoing battle between several powerhouses for it. How do you plan on participating? You're only a true immortal. You'll die before you realize it. Zi Xuan said. They'll try to get it for you, so just sit here and prepare your body for my return, she said with a passionate smile. Tian Qiyuan chuckled at her words and said, I cannot risk losing it. Who knows how long it'll take for the next one to show up. Also, who said I am only a true immortal? Before Zi Xuan could even question his words, Tian Qiyuan released his suppressed cultivation and entered the God Ascension realm. His aura continued to surge, ascending swiftly through the levels of the God Ascension realm, only stopping when his cultivation reached the 9th level of the God Ascension realm. This revelation shocked Zi Xuan speechless. Why, you were at the peak of God Ascension realm this entire time? She cried out loud. Of course, he smiled at her reaction. Fuck. I am really glad that I didn't force myself upon him at that time, or I would have ended up embarrassing myself. She cried inwardly. Can you bring me to the location? I'll compensate you later. Tian Qiyuan said a moment later. All right. Follow me. Zi Xuan led Tian Qiyuan into the starry sky. The two of them traveled for 3 months straight without any breaks until they reached their destination. Long before their arrival, they could sense powerful ripples in the starry sky caused by cultivators engaged in fierce battles. Upon arriving, they could see a dozen powerful experts engaged in several battles at once. Not far away from the battlefield was a beautiful black orb contained in a formation to prevent it from floating away or being stolen. Tian Qiyuan did not immediately join the fight and watched for a little. The others noticed his presence even before he arrived, but seeing how he didn't join the fight, they didn't bother him. Of course, they still kept some of their attention on him just in case. Eventually, Tian Qiyuan approached them and spoke, his voice resounding in their minds. My name is Tian Qiyuan, also known as the Exalted Blacksmith. Just like you, my purpose here is the Void Meteoroid core. The experts temporarily halted their movements to look at Tian Qiyuan, who was hiding behind his usual mask. If he had been a nobody, they wouldn't have given him any attention, but Tian Qiyuan's fame is so widespread that they couldn't afford to ignore him. Seeing that had acquired their attention, Tian Qiyuan continued, I do not want to resolve this with violence, so I have a suggestion, an offer for all of you who are fighting for the Void Meteoroid core. If all of us fought, there would only be one winner and many deaths. Instead, I will offer each of you a celestial-grade treasure crafted by yours truly in exchange for letting me have the Void Meteoroid core. This way all of us win. Celestial-grade treasure crafted by you? As enticing as that may sound, I know you only became a divine blacksmith several hundred years ago. Are you asking us to wait for hundreds of thousands of years? Even if we agree, we can't ensure that you'll keep your word in the future. One of them proclaimed his skepticism. I mean no disrespect when I say this, but Exalted Blacksmith, even a celestial-grade treasure crafted by you will not be as valuable as this Void Meteoroid core. If you want it, you'll have to fight for it like the rest of us. After hearing their responses, Tian Qiyuan said, Indeed, even a celestial-grade treasure would not be as valuable as this Void Meteoroid core. However, I am not only offering the treasure. After a slight pause, he continued in a cold tone, I am also letting you leave with your life. Is the Void Meteoroid core worth more than your life? Instead of losing your life to me and losing the Void Meteoroid core, you can leave with your life and a celestial-grade treasure in the near future. If that's not good enough, I will have no other choice but to fight for it. None of the experts there expected Tian Qiyuan to threaten all of them suddenly, Zi Xuan included. All that fame must gotten into your head, Exalted Blacksmith. You should stick to what you're good at, hammering iron. You should get the fuck out of here while we are still being nice. If you think we won't kill you just because you are a divine blacksmith, you need to think again. Tian Qiyuan was one of the most popular and revered blacksmiths in the world. These experts knew that killing him would provoke the wrath of many powerful factions, as it would mean the end of not only his life but also all his future masterpieces. In fact, it was an unspoken rule never to kill individuals of immense significance to the world if it was avoidable, such as top pill masters and blacksmiths, as their deaths would have unimaginable repercussions on the world. With that said, there were several other divine blacksmiths besides Tian Qiyuan, and the world would still function properly, albeit a little worse even if he were gone, and it wasn't as though he was irreplaceable. It's clear that not all of you will accept my offer, but my offer is to each of you individually, so you can still individually accept my offer and leave this battlefield. I will give you 10 seconds to decide. Once that time has run out, I will immediately begin killing everyone who refused to leave. Tian Qiyuan declared in a domineering manner, sending chills down Zi Xuan's entire being. Chapter 1523 Hidden Strength. Chapter 1523 Hidden Strength 1523 Hidden Strength. After the warning, Tian Qiyuan began counting down from 10, 9, This bastard's truly gone insane. What does he think he can do to us with his measly true immortal cultivation? Don't force our hands, Exalted Blacksmith. 7. 6. I'll accept your offer. One of them suddenly raised his hand before departing from the battlefield. In his eyes, it wasn't worth offending Tian Qiyuan for the void meteoroid core, especially when he was already on the verge of giving up. Tian Qiyuan acknowledged the person who accepted his offer with a nod and continued counting down. 5. Do you really think Hell lived long enough to fulfill his promise to you? Hell be killed by us long before then. 4. He'll also accept your offer, Exalted Blacksmith. Another person agreed to withdraw from the fight. In his eyes, even if Tian Qiyuan is killed in this battle, he could simply pretend that nothing happened and return to fighting for the void meteoroid core afterward. 3. 2. 1. In the end, only 2 people accepted Tian Qiyuan's offer and left the battlefield. However, they didn't completely leave and spectated their fight from a distance. And 0. Starting now, whoever dares to block my path to the void meteoroid core will be killed. Tian Qiyuan spoke in a grim voice before releasing his suppressed cultivation. His cultivation base immediately soared to the peak of the God Ascension realm, shocking the others as they were only between the 7th level and the 8th level of the God Ascension realm. This bastard has been hiding his cultivation this entire time? Fuck. We need to fight him together. The people there quickly formed a temporary alliance to get rid of Tian Qiyuan, who was the biggest threat, not to mention his earlier provocation. This made it easier for them to work together. Seeing this, Tian Qiyuan retrieved an Empyrean-grade sword and laughed out loud. This will make things move quicker. His body suddenly surged with sword aura before turning into enhanced sword aura. Then, after another push, it became supreme sword aura, something only Zi Xuan had been able to achieve until now. Why you can use supreme sword aura? Zi Xuan was just as shocked as everyone else there, perhaps even more, as nobody there was more familiar with supreme sword aura than her. She had only discovered supreme sword aura several thousand years ago, so it was quite shocking for a blacksmith who spends the majority of their time with a hammer to achieve supreme sword aura. Even the most talented sword masters, only slightly behind her, were nowhere near achieving supreme sword aura. While his enemies were in a daze, Tian Qiyuan swung his sword at them. Endless sword domain. Tens of thousands of swords enhanced with supreme sword aura rushed at the small group of individuals before him. They had been fighting for months before Tian Qiyuan's arrival without any clear winners. Yet, after showing up for less than an hour and with a single sword technique, Tian Qiyuan destroyed the bodies of half of the people there, forcing their souls to be homeless. Tian Qiyuan did not immediately launch another attack. Instead, he casually approached the void meteoroid core in the distance while ignoring the people around him. Omicron and the others were so stunned by what had just happened and his audacity to covet the material before he even finished killing a single one of them. However, before any of them could act, Tian Qiyuan spoke in a cold voice. That was my last warning. I can guarantee that all of you will perish in the next attack. Despite his bold and arrogant words, nobody there doubted it. They exchanged glances with each other to see if they were going to continue fighting Tian Qiyuan, which would undoubtedly lead to their death. Suddenly, 2 more presences appeared in the distance, fast approaching from 2 different directions. These 2 figures appeared almost at the same time. Zi Xuan immediately recognized the newcomers as none other than the eternal blacksmith and heaven and earth blacksmith. Since the void meteoroid core was akin to a holy grail for blacksmiths, it wasn't weird for these 2 powerhouses to show up. Tian Qiyuan halted his movements upon their arrival. Like him, they were both at the peak of the God Ascension realm. You, Exalted Blacksmith? Since when did you have such a profound cultivation base? Both of them were shocked when they sensed Tian Qiyuan's cultivation base that rivaled them. Even though Tian Qiyuan caught up to them in terms of crafting skills, neither of them was too bitter or envious because of his low cultivation base. However, it turned out Tian Qiyuan had been hiding his cultivation base this entire time. How old is he, anyway? He only started making his presence known a few thousand years ago, but there's no way he's only that old. Both his cultivation base and smithing capabilities have already reached the peak of this world. Eternal Blacksmith wore a pondering frown on his face. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith also wore a similar look on his face. Both of them thought Tian Qiyuan was their junior, but with this new information he might very well be their senior. I don't want to fight to death with my fellow divine blacksmiths, but I really need that void meteoroid core. Is there any way for me to convince you 2 to step back? Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was the first to speak, breaking the silence. What a coincidence. I also really need the Void Meteoroid core. Eternal Blacksmith said. Tian Qiyuan narrowed his eyes at them. After a moment of silence he proposed, how about this? Instead of a death match, let's fight as blacksmiths should. The three of us will compete against each other through our smithing skills, and the winner will take the Void Meteoroid core. Oh. What do you have in mind? Eternal Blacksmith's interest was immediately piqued, as this was also an opportunity to see which of them was the best. I'm also listening. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said. Chapter 1524 Smithing Competition? Chapter 1524 Smithing Competition 1524 Smithing Competition. I'm glad you both agree. Let's do something that won't take too long and is fair across the board. Tian Qiyuan said. He continued, before I give my suggestion, let me hear yours first. The two of them began pondering. A few moments later, Eternal Blacksmith spoke up, how about each of us craft 5 Empyrean-grade treasures with the same materials? The one with the most success wins. If there's a tie, the quality will determine the outcome. That will take too long. Let's just see which of us can craft the highest grade and quality weapon. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith proposed. Both tried to gain a slight advantage over each other, as Eternal Blacksmith was confident in his higher success rate, and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was confident in his slightly superior quality. Tian Qiyuan, after carefully listening to their suggestions, took ideas from both and proposed, how about we craft a weapon of every grade from Spirit grade to Empyrean grade? We will all receive the same material for every weapon, but how we use it will be dependent on our own expertise. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith exchanged glances with each other before nodding their heads. Let's schedule this match half a year from now. For the time being, we can give the Void Meteoroid core to someone trustworthy to hold. If they dare covet it, we'll work together to destroy them. How does that sound? Tian Qiyuan said a moment later. Who can we trust the Void Meteoroid core to? Heaven and Earth Blacksmith asked. I will do it. Zi Xuan suddenly spoke up. I am Zi Xuan, one of 9 unrivaled swords from the Unrivaled 9-sword sect. Zi Xuan quickly volunteered to hold it. The sword goddess, huh? I trust the Unrivaled 9-sword sect enough, so I have no problem. Eternal Blacksmith said. If you're okay with them, I don't mind letting them hold the Void Meteoroid core. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith agreed. Then it's settled. Tian Qiyuan grabbed the Void Meteoroid core before tossing it to Zi Xuan. What about the location? Eternal Blacksmith suddenly asked. I'll let you two decide. Tian Qiyuan said. How about the Grand Elder Summit? It's a hotspot for blacksmiths with plenty of competitions around the year. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith suggested. That sounds good. Let's use the Grand Elder Summit for our competition. Eternal Blacksmith agreed with the location. He continued, what about the materials? I'll supply them. Tian Qiyuan calmly said. I will also throw in some materials. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said. In that case I will do the same. Good, then I'll see you both at the Grand Elder Summit in half a year. Tian Qiyuan left the scene with Zi Xuan shortly after. Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith disappeared soon after, leaving the others utterly dumbfounded and dispirited, feeling as though their existences didn't even matter. The upcoming match between the top 3 divine blacksmiths quickly spread through the 9 heavens like wildfire, especially among blacksmiths. Matches between divine blacksmiths were rare events, so one could imagine the excitement when news spread of a 3-way competition between the 3 most famous divine blacksmiths of their era. Moreover, this match would finally answer a question that had been debated for thousands of years. Which of them was the best? Soon, the Grand Elder Summit became immensely crowded with people eager to witness the upcoming match. It was to the point where it became nearly impossible to walk in the streets without bumping into others or being bumped in every direction. Even major sects and many famous families showed up just to spectate the match. Half a year later, Tian Qiyuan made his way to the Grand Elder Summit. When he arrived, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith were already waiting at the peak of the summit, where the match would take place. Zi Xuan was also there with the Void Meteoroid core, but she was not alone. The sect master of the Unrivaled 9-sword sect was also there to represent the sect, as well as the other 8 unrivaled swords. Since Zi Xuan gave their sect this opportunity to shine, it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. The number of spectators was massive, enough to make Tian Qiyuan's previous auction look tiny in comparison. Moreover, influential figures from most of the top families and sects in the 8th heaven and 9th heaven were present, something that rarely happens. In the center was a large arena with all of the necessary equipment for the competitors to craft their treasures. Not far away were 3 large piles of materials, enough to craft a treasure of each grade with some leftovers. Thank you all for coming to witness this historic event. Eternal Blacksmith spoke in a loud voice shortly after Tian Qiyuan arrived. Over the next few weeks, the 3 of us will be showcasing our smithing experience to the whole world and at the same time, competing with each other for the Void Meteoroid core. We will be crafting 1 weapon for each grade, all the way up to Empyrean grade. We all have the same amount and type of materials, but how we distribute and utilize these materials will be entirely at our discretion. We will be judged on our speed, success rate and quality, and we must successfully create a weapon of every grade in order to be judged, so failing to create a single treasure means an automatic disqualification. Before we begin, we shall give a brief introduction of our background and experience. Eternal Blacksmith began talking about his background. He spoke of his earlier days as an apprentice blacksmith, what caused him to choose such a path, how long it taken him to reach his current level, and all sorts of personal achievements that were unknown to the public until today. Despite calling it a brief introduction, Eternal Blacksmith ended up talking for 2 hours straight. However, nobody minded, as this was valuable information about one of the most respected and skilled blacksmiths in the entire 9 heavens. Chapter 1525 Uncle Chen's Weapon Store. Chapter 1525 Uncle Chen's Weapon Store 1525 Uncle Chen's Weapon Store. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith stepped forward and began introducing himself once Eternal Blacksmith ended his introduction. Not wanting to fall behind Eternal Blacksmith, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith also talked about his personal achievements that were never made public. He also spoke of his childhood, where he trained to become the blacksmith he is today, and many more. In the end, his introduction lasted 3 full hours. Tian Qiyuan nearly fell asleep by the end. Once it was his turn, he stepped forward and cleared his throat before speaking. My name is Tian Qiyuan, and I was born within the 6th heaven. The first thing I did when I became a proper cultivator was find a weapon. I purchased my first weapon from Uncle Chen's weapon store, which was just down the block. Uncle Chen's weapon store was quite popular in my city, and they boasted of having near indestructible weapons. With Uncle Chen's weapon in my grasp, I felt safe, as if no harm could come to me as long as I had it. Unfortunately, Uncle Chen's weapon broke on my very first experience with it, and I nearly died in the process. I was devastated, to the point where I vowed to become a blacksmith who can create truly indestructible weapons. I don't know who this Uncle Chen is, but am glad he made trash. If it weren't for him, the Exalted Blacksmith might not exist today. Zi Xuan muttered to herself after learning this information. Tian Qiyuan continued, I started my journey as a blacksmith a few years later, but with no guidance or knowledge of smithing, I decided to join a sect. I approached the fiery hill of Fire Mountain in hopes of becoming their disciple, but alas, they deemed me unworthy and didn't even let me participate in their entrance exam. Fiery Hill of Fire Mountain? Upon hearing this familiar name, many people there suddenly turned to look at a certain individual in the audience. This individual wore an expression on his face that made it seem like he'd swallowed a live fly. He was the current sect master of the Fiery Hill of Fire Mountain, a very reputable sect that produced many genius blacksmiths throughout the years. Sensing countless unfriendly and disappointed gazes directed at him, the sect master of the Fiery Hill of Fire Mountain hastily stood up and said, I had no idea about this. I will find the blind bastard who turned you away and skin him alive, even if it's the last I do. Tian Qiyuan turned to look at the sect master and smiled, Don't worry about it. It happened thousands of years ago. I was just a nobody back then after all. Many in the audience suddenly raised an eyebrow, as if they had collectively realized something. This included Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. Exalted Blacksmith, how old are you exactly? The Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was the first to voice the question that had been on everyone's mind for a while now. Him? I stopped counting long ago, but I should be around 11,000 years old, Tian Qiyuan casually responded. Only 11,000 years old? Both Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith exclaimed out loud, their voice in sync with each other. Heavens? Zi Xuan covered her mouth in a shocked manner. You're lying. There's no way you're only 11,000 years old. Eternal Blacksmith pointed at him and shouted, rejecting his claims. You're telling us to believe that you'd managed to reach the peak of God Ascension realm and become a divine blacksmith in 11,000 years. Are you mocking us right now? Tian Qiyuan shrugged in response. Whether you believe me or not is none of my business. Anyway, we're getting off track. After being rejected by the fiery hill of Fire Mountain, I tried several more sects only to be refused by them. Tian Qiyuan quickly brushed off the matter of his age and continued his story while ignoring the audience's stare. In the end, I decided to study alone. I purchased a book that taught the basics and started my journey to become a blacksmith from there. And now you're claiming to have self-taught yourself? That kind of fucking bullshit is this? Eternal Blacksmith almost lost all of his respect for Tian Qiyuan after his seemingly bogus claims. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was in a similar position. He was so enraged that his face became red, and his entire body was trembling. If there weren't so many people around them, he would have already started throwing fists at Tian Qiyuan. Noticing the heavy atmosphere around him, Tian Qiyuan ended his introduction and said, "Well, that's about it. Let's get the competition started, shall we?" Although Tian Qiyuan's introduction lasted only several minutes, its impact on the audience was greater than that of Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith combined. He must have done that on purpose so he could mess with our heads, which will affect our performance during the competition. What a crafty son of a bitch. Eternal Blacksmith suddenly had a revelation, which helped him calm down almost immediately. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith took a little longer to realize this, but he started laughing once he did. Ah, fuck. You almost got me there, Exalted Blacksmith. You're much more cunning than I thought. Huh. What are you talking about? Tian Qiyuan questioned with a genuinely puzzled face. Still trying to deny it? Alright, let's have it your way. When the audience witnessed their conversation, they quickly came to the same conclusion as Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. Oh, so the Exalted Blacksmith was only trying to mess with their minds to have an upper hand during the competition? I thought he was being serious at first. Now that I think about it, it was silly of me to believe him even for a second. Tian Qiyuan eventually understood their misunderstanding, but he had no reason to correct them, so he remained silent. Sometime later, the three divine blacksmiths approached their anvil, starting the competition shortly after. Chapter 1526 Divine Blacksmith Competition. Chapter 1526 Divine Blacksmith Competition 1526 Divine Blacksmith Competition. Let the competition for the Void Meteoroid core begin. Zi Xuan declared shortly after the three divine blacksmiths arrived at their workstations. When the competition began, the three divine blacksmiths used their divine sense to check the materials. Each of them brought their own material, and none of them knew what the other would bring until the day of the competition. This made it so they couldn't spend half a year preparing for the competition. Once they identified all of the materials, they sat down and closed their eyes to run simulations within their mind. What are they doing? Someone who wasn't knowledgeable about the process asked out loud. The person next to him, a renowned blacksmith, explained, they are currently crafting the weapons in their mind. An experienced blacksmith has the ability to recreate the process of creation inside their head, and the more skillful they are, the more accurate it'll be. Since they're not just crafting a single weapon but 7 weapons each with a different grade, they need to allocate the materials for each weapon properly, or they might not have enough materials. 4 days later, Eternal Blacksmith was the first one to emerge from his meditation and immediately got to work. He retrieved several materials from the pile and started refining them. Judging by the materials he picked, he's going to start crafting an ancient grade treasure. It's not too easy and not too difficult, perfect for a warm-up. One of the blacksmiths there explained. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith emerged from his meditation 6 hours after Eternal Blacksmith and immediately went to work. Looks like Heaven and Earth Blacksmith plans on starting at spirit grade, working up the grades one by one. Tian Qiyuan remained in meditation, seemingly unaffected and undisturbed by the noises coming from the other two. A few hours after Heaven and Earth Blacksmith began his work, he finished his first creation, a short bow, and placed it on a display rack with 7 slots. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was renowned for crafting the finest bows, daggers and gauntlets in the 9 heavens and was expected by many to focus on creating these weapons during the competition. Even though it's only a spirit-grade treasure, its aura is stronger than many earth-grade treasures. The audience inspected the result with their divine sense. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith immediately proceeded to work on the second treasure, which, as someone had anticipated, appeared to be Earth grade. 3 more days passed in the blink of an eye, and Eternal Blacksmith had just finished his first creation. It was an ancient grade spear. Just like Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, Eternal Blacksmith appeared to be focused on his strengths, which were spears, swords, sabers, and anything with a similar shape. Even though there were 3 distinct rhythms, none of the competitors were distracted by the others. Each was entirely focused on their own cadence. Half an hour later, Tian Qiyuan's cadence stopped when he finished his first creation, which turned out to be a gauntlet. He finished the spirit grade treasure so quickly, several times faster than Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. The audience didn't miss this detail. After putting his creation on display, Tian Qiyuan immediately began working on the next grade. Ding, ding, ding. The audience was surprised when Tian Qiyuan's cadence sounded different than before. This time it was slightly quicker with pauses every 5 strikes. Half an hour later, Tian Qiyuan finished the Earth grade treasure, a bow, spending the same amount of time he spent with the Spirit grade treasure. Typically, it takes longer to craft higher grade treasures due to the stronger materials used, but that logic did not seem to apply to Tian Qiyuan. The same phenomenon occurred when Tian Qiyuan crafted his Heaven grade treasure, which took the form of a saber. How's he doing that? I have never heard of anyone crafting a Heaven grade treasure in less than half an hour. The blacksmiths watching were left stunned. Fuck. It's too amazing. Do you think he'll do the same with Divine grade? Surely that won't happen. It can't happen. My heart won't be able to take it. As Tian Qiyuan began working on his Divine grade treasure, his cadence sped up again. It became clear to the audience that Tian Qiyuan increases his cadence the higher the grade. Half an hour later, Tian Qiyuan hung his finished product on the display, catching up with Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. The audience stared at the Divine grade spear with odd expressions, many of them in disbelief. Don't tell me he'll do the same thing with Ancient grade? That would be ridiculous. Won't the quality suffer if he's working this fast? Someone asked. That will depend on his skill. The audience expected Tian Qiyuan to spend half an hour with the Ancient grade treasure. However, he didn't start working and sat down to meditate again. Huh. He's meditating again? I thought he finished with that already. Perhaps had only managed to craft up to Divine grade initially? If it already takes him so many days to craft up to Divine grade, how long will it take him to finish Ancient grade and above? Weeks? Months? This doesn't make any sense. One typically works faster in their mental simulation than in reality. Exalted Blacksmith is somehow doing it in reverse. Truly an unfathomable existence. Several days later, Tian Qiyuan emerged from his meditation at the same time Heaven and Earth finished his Ancient grade treasure. As for Eternal Blacksmith, had also finished every grade below Ancient grade. Both Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith started working on their Mystic grade treasure on the same day, with Eternal Blacksmith being an hour ahead. While they started refining their materials for the Mystic grade treasure, Tian Qiyuan began working on his Ancient grade treasure. The audience held their breaths as the timer neared 30 minutes, wondering if Tian Qiyuan would be able to create another miracle. When 30 minutes passed and Tian Qiyuan was still hammering away at the material, many sighs of relief could be heard from the audience, most of them coming from blacksmiths. Thank the heavens he didn't finish in 30 minutes. I would have quit my career as a blacksmith if he did. However, after another 20 minutes, the blacksmiths who sighed in relief earlier began holding their breaths nervously again, as they could tell that Tian Qiyuan was on the verge of finishing. Heavens! It hasn't even been an hour. What kind of ridiculous speed is this? Even the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith took several days to craft an Ancient grade treasure. Meanwhile, both Heaven and Earth Blacksmith and Eternal Blacksmith were too absorbed in their work to pay attention to anything else. After putting up his treasure, Tian Qiyuan returned to meditating. However, nobody dared to make fun of him for being slow anymore. Chapter 1527 Half the Materials. Chapter 1527 Half the Materials 1527 Half the Materials. As Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith neared the completion of their Mystic grade treasure several weeks later, Tian Qiyuan opened his eyes and emerged from his meditation once again. He quickly gathered the materials and started creating his Mystic grade treasure. Once he refined the materials and began forming its shape, it was clear that he intended to create a sword. He's doing the sword now? I figured that he would save that for his Empyrean grade treasure since that's what he's most familiar with. Zi Xuan was surprised by Tian Qiyuan's choice. If one looked at all of the treasures Tian Qiyuan had created up to this point, none of them were the same type of weapon. Meanwhile, Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith only crafted what they were famous for. Even without Tian Qiyuan winning, many blacksmiths would agree that Tian Qiyuan was the better blacksmith of the three in terms of skills due to his ability to craft excellent quality weapons of all types equally. How long do you think it'll take him this time? Probably 2 hours. No way. He'll sell my left nut if he does it within 2 hours. Why the left nut, specifically? Maybe because he already sold his right nut? The audience cracked jokes with each other. However, most if not all of the blacksmiths there remained focused on the competition, not daring to miss any moment of it. To witness a divine blacksmith at work was a rare moment, much less 3 of the best in the 9 heavens simultaneously. Additionally, merely by watching these divine blacksmiths at work, their own understanding of smithing deepened. A few hours passed, but Tian Qiyuan had not yet finished his treasure, allowing the other blacksmiths to sigh in relief. Had he completed a mystic-grade treasure in such a short time, it would have undoubtedly ended many blacksmiths' careers that day. Heaven and Earth and Eternal Blacksmith finished their mystic-grade treasures 2 days later. With just 1 treasure remaining to craft, they didn't immediately start working on their final treasure and returned to meditating first. Even with their experience and skills, they had about a 60 to 70% chance of success when it comes to Empyrean grade, and any mishap would instantly destroy their chances of success. Tian Qiyuan finished his mystic grade treasure 3 days later and placed the sword on display. Zi Xuan had an urge to take the sword for herself when she saw it, but she managed to hold herself back. He's probably going to spend the next week meditating again. The audience speculated when Tian Qiyuan was done. However, to their shock, Tian Qiyuan did not meditate and even grabbed more materials. He's going to attempt crafting the Empyrean grade without any preparations. Even the other 2 decided to meditate first. Why is he rushing to create the treasure when he took his sweet time before this? What's going on inside his head? He only became a divine blacksmith not long ago, right? His success rate must be pretty low right now, so one would expect him to take his time, but this is reckless? Even Eternal Blacksmith, renowned for his high success rate, only had around 30% success rate when he first became a divine blacksmith. Maybe he's trying to show off? Hasn't he already shown off enough? He doesn't need to prove himself anymore. As the audience spoke about Tian Qiyuan's decision, the person himself finished picking out his materials, which left everyone puzzled. He's leaving behind so many materials even though this is the last treasure he needs to craft. Everyone there expected Tian Qiyuan to use all of the remaining material for the final treasure, but he only took half of it. This puzzled everyone, including the expert blacksmiths. However, Tian Qiyuan didn't bother explaining his actions and immediately went to work. Ding, ding, ding. His hammer danced back and forth in a rhythmic manner, causing sparks to fly in every direction with every strike. A few days later, Eternal Blacksmith emerged from his meditation, and he was surprised to see Tian Qiyuan had already started crafting his final treasure. What the hell? He's managed to get ahead of us? Did he go straight into it without preparations? Eternal Blacksmith quickly came to this conclusion after seeing Tian Qiyuan's progress. He looked at the small pile of materials and became even more confused. Is he even trying to win? There's no way he can craft a high-quality Empyrean-grade treasure with the amount of materials he used. Eternal Blacksmith stopped looking at Tian Qiyuan and focused on his own creation. Naturally, he used all of the materials he had left. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith came out of his meditation a day and a half after Eternal Blacksmith. However, he panicked a little when he saw that he was last to begin working. I would understand it if it's Eternal Blacksmith, but Exalted Blacksmith too. He was several days behind us. How did he catch up so quickly? Even though he noticed Tian Qiyuan's leftover materials, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was in too much of a hurry to think twice about it. He quickly got to work shortly after. Finally, the conclusion of this competition is near its end. It should only take them around a month to complete their work. Who do you think will win? Judging purely on the current results, I'd say Exalted Blacksmith has a really good chance of winning. Not only are his treasures of higher quality than the other 2, but his collection is also very diverse. Meanwhile, the other 2 not only lost in quality but also in variety. While it's true that Exalted Blacksmith has the upper hand right now, things might change at the very end. I don't know why, but Exalted Blacksmith opted to use less material for his final creation, which is also the one that will grant him the most points. He might not even complete the final task because he rushed it. Who are you to claim that he rushed it? Exalted Blacksmith's comprehension is beyond any of our understanding. Time passed quickly, and the audience speculated on the results non-stop. 2 weeks had passed since Qiyuan started working, and it looked like he was on the verge of completing his treasure. That shape, he's creating a dagger? Zi Xuan muttered to herself as Qiyuan molded the shape. A few hours later, Qiyuan completed his treasure. It turned out to be a medium-grade Empyrean-grade treasure. He placed the dagger on the display, filling all 6 slots. However, instead of leaving the arena like everyone had expected, Qiyuan returned to the anvil with the remaining materials. What the hell? He's not done? What could he craft with so little materials? The materials are quite high in quality, so it'd be really wasteful to create low-grade treasures with them. However, there's not enough to create another high-grade treasure either. In the end, his treasures came out as medium-grade because he didn't use them. If he did, it would have come out high quality, perhaps even peak quality. One of the blacksmiths there explained. I guess we can only wait and see what he cooks up with it. In the blink of an eye, another week passed. Both Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith were on the verge of completing their weapon. Hey, the fact it's taking Exalted Blacksmith this long to craft the treasure. Don't tell me it's another Empyrean-grade treasure? Someone suddenly speculated. From that small pile of treasures? No way. There's not enough materials. I swear on my soul I will sell my left nut if he crafts another Empyrean-grade treasure. One of the blacksmiths there declared. The audience waited in anticipation as Qiyuan neared the process of forming the treasure's shape. It's another dagger. He's making another dagger. After another 3 days, Qiyuan finished his 8th treasure. The aura it emitted was not inferior to his previous creation, and when the audience realized he had crafted 2 Empyrean-grade treasures, it sent them into a frenzy. Heavens! Exalted Blacksmith actually crafted 2 Empyrean-grade treasures. Fuck me, he actually did it? And it's medium quality. I heard someone swear on their soul that they'll sell their left nut if it was achieved. Is he actually going to do it? The person who made said declaration looked devastated after seeing the results. His face was as pale as sheets, and he looked like he was standing before his own grave. He could feel many gazes on him, which only worsened his anxiety. Had made such a bold declaration because he was certain that it wasn't possible. Unfortunately, Qiyuan had made the impossible possible. The man wanted to go back on his words, and even if it were a half-assed oath, Head swore on his soul that he would do it. If he fails to fulfill his oath, his soul may be shattered by heavenly tribulation. While the man lamented his situation, Qiyuan placed the 2nd Empyrean-grade dagger on the same display as the first. As the 2 daggers touched, they emitted a harmonic aura, as if they were destined to be a pair. Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith suddenly halted their hammers for the first time since they started working. Although the chaotic audience didn't disturb them, the aura radiating from the daggers was so profound that it momentarily blanked their minds upon sensing it. Once their hammers stopped and their momentum killed, their chances of finishing the treasure dropped significantly, to the point where it was almost guaranteed to fail. However, neither of them were angry. They knew that even if they completed their treasure, it would not be enough to defeat Qiyuan, who crafted 2 Empyrean-grade treasures. Chapter 1528A Special Sword. Chapter 1528A Special Sword. 1528A Special Sword. I admit defeat. I never even considered crafting 2 Empyrean-grade treasures. Eternal Blacksmith declared shortly after he stopped working. It's also my defeat. Congratulations, Exalted Blacksmith. You're the winner of this competition. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said afterward. Qiyuan bowed to them with a smile. Thank you. It was a fun experience. I never had the opportunity to experience this kind of excitement before. I hope we can do this again in the future. Sometime later, Zi Xuan approached Qiyuan with the void Meteoroid core in her grasp. Congratulations, Qiyuan, she said as she offered the material to him. Thanks. Qiyuan casually accepted the prize before tossing it into his spatial ring. Since when did you become so close to Exalted Blacksmith? The sect master of the Unrivaled 9 Swords sect inquired with interest. If Zi Xuan and Qiyuan were in a romantic relationship, it would greatly benefit their sect. Hearing his question, Qiyuan responded calmly, She's my #1 customer, so we see each other often. I see. Oh, I am 3 Swords Divine, the sect master of the Unrivaled 9 Swords sect. In the upper heavens, immortals who have achieved great feats and widespread recognition are bestowed with a title of their own choosing. As a display of respect, this title is used in place of their actual name, which is reserved only for close friends and family. As for Tian Qiyuan, he did not pick the title Exalted Blacksmith, which became widespread before he even realized it. However, he never corrected it or changed it, so it just stuck with him. By the way, Exalted Blacksmith, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, and Eternal Blacksmith, I have a small question for you. What do you plan on doing with the treasures you crafted during the competition? Three Swords Divine asked. When the audience heard this question, they stopped talking to focus on the Divine Blacksmith's response. They had all been wondering about it long before the competition even concluded. Tian Qiyuan was the first to speak. I have no use for it, so I planned on selling them. Same here. They'll auction it off or something. Eternal Blacksmith said. He had no intention of keeping something that would only remind him of this utter defeat. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith nodded in agreement. He'll also do the same. If you don't mind, he'll purchase the Mystic Grade Sword from you, Exalted Blacksmith. Three Swords Divine suddenly said. However, before Tian Qiyuan could even respond, someone from the audience shouted, "Hold it! I also want to buy it." A crazed frenzy ensued, with people shouting their offers for the treasures. Even many of the blacksmiths there joined, as they wanted something to commemorate this event. Seeing this, Tian Qiyuan said, I will just do the usual and let the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion handle the sales of my treasures. If you want it, go bid for it there. A second later, a figure from the audience gracefully jumped from the spectators' area to the arena. It was Qing Linger. It's our honor to serve you once again, Exalted Blacksmith. Do you want me to take the treasures off your hand now so you don't need to make the travel later? She asked. Tian Qiyuan nodded, sure. Take mine while you're at it. Eternal Blacksmith suddenly said. Mine too. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said. Why yes. Qing Linger was ecstatic, feeling like she'd struck gold. Once Qing Linger collected all of the treasures, she asked, do you have a schedule in mind, or can we auction them as we see fit? Just sell them as soon as possible. Tian Qiyuan said. Mine as well. Eternal Blacksmith said. Same. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith followed. Sometime later, Qing Linger left the Grand Elder Summit and returned to the Mystic Jade Auction Pavilion to immediately start the process. Seeing this, many of the audience also left to prepare for the upcoming auction. Before leaving, Eternal Blacksmith said, although I lost to you today, I won't lose the title of God of Creation. Dream on, old man. I will be the next God of Blacksmith. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith declared. Are you willing to bet your left nut on that declaration? Tian Qiyuan chuckled. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's face immediately darkened. Ah! Eternal Blacksmith laughed out loud as he flew away. Tian Qiyuan also left the scene shortly after. Once the Divine Blacksmiths were gone, the Grand Elder Summit quickly became empty. Tian Qiyuan went straight back to his own world where he stored the Void Meteoroid core. I'm going to become the God of Creation before I craft you. He muttered in a low voice before returning to his training in pursuit of the title of God of Creation. However, he needed to be able to craft celestial-grade treasures before he could even attempt the title. Several centuries passed. One day, Zi Xuan showed up in his world with more materials. Hey Qiyuan. It's been a while. How's your training? She strolled into his home, treating it as though it was her own. Same as usual. What kind of materials did you get me today? He asked as if he already knew. This one. Zi Xuan showed him the material in her grasp. With this, I only need 3 more materials for my masterpiece. What kind of sword do you want today? He asked. I want a special one today. Zi Xuan pointed at his lower body and continued, I want that sword. Tian Qiyuan fell silent after hearing her response, but he didn't appear surprised. Sometime after the competition for the Void Meteoroid core, Zi Xuan showed up at his place to celebrate his victory. One thing led to another, and it eventually led them into the bedroom, where they shared a passionate night with each other. Since then, Zi Xuan has ceased to be just a customer and has become something more, though they are not exactly dating. When you ask me like this, it feels like I am selling my body for materials, Tian Qiyuan eventually said with a bittersweet smile. Is that so? Then here. It's a gift for you. Zi Xuan tossed the material at him. Once Tian Qiyuan caught it and stowed it away, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the bedroom. It's been a while. Let me play with your sword. Tian Qiyuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry in this situation, but he didn't exactly dislike it either. However, the god of creation ceremony requires one to craft multiple celestial-grade treasures in one sitting. I will need at least another 1,000 years before I can confidently achieve that. Anyway, here you go. Tian Qiyuan suddenly extended his arm with the sword to Zi Xuan. Zi Xuan didn't instantly comprehend his words and stared at him with a dazed face. It's a gift to you for keeping me company throughout the years. Besides Feng, you're the only one I can truly be myself around. Zi Xuan was speechless. This was the first time she's received a gift from him after all. Are you sure I can have it? It would sell for a fortune if you sold it. I don't care about that kind of stuff. It's not like I don't have money either. If I really need money, I can just make a few more and sell those. However, the first one will belong to you. Thank you. Zi Xuan didn't know what else to say. Sometime later, Zi Xuan spoke. Speaking of the God of Creation ceremony, Eternal Blacksmith recently announced that he would be partaking it in 2,000 years. Omicron Eternal Blacksmith, huh? He's been a divine blacksmith for hundreds of thousands of years after all. Did Heaven and Earth Blacksmith say anything about it? He then asked. Not that I know of. Is that so? Zi Xuan returned to the Unrivaled Nine-Sword sect a few days later. Almost 1,000 years later, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith suddenly announced that he would be doing the God of Creation ceremony in a year, shocking the world. It was clear that Heaven and Earth Blacksmith wanted to beat Eternal Blacksmith to it, but many couldn't help but wonder if had been too hasty with this decision. After all, a blacksmith could only attempt the God of Creation ceremony 3 times in their lifetime, and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith already attempted it once. Have you heard? Heaven and Earth Blacksmith will be taking his God of Creation ceremony in a year. Zi Xuan visited Tian Qiyuan after hearing this news. Really? I guess I'll have to put my training on halt to watch it. Zi Xuan then realized something. Oh, right. It's customary for all divine blacksmiths to witness the God of Creation ceremony, so it'll be a divine blacksmith gathering. Where is he going to do it? Tian Qiyuan asked a moment later. The Grand Elders Summit, she said. That place again, huh? Sometime later, Tian Qiyuan and Zi Xuan made their way to the Grand Elder Summit to watch Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's God of Creation ceremony. A crowd had already gathered even though there was still a month until the God of Creation ceremony, and within this crowd was Eternal Blacksmith as well as 5 other divine blacksmiths. Besides Exalted Blacksmith, Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, there were 5 other divine blacksmiths in their era. These 5 divine blacksmiths were Relentless Blacksmith, Fiery Heaven Blacksmith, Yin-Yang Blacksmith, Silver Flame Blacksmith, and Star Forging Blacksmith. Even though he's been a blacksmith for thousands of years, this was Tian Qiyuan's first time seeing the other divine blacksmith besides Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith. It's an honor to meet my seniors. Tian Qiyuan bowed to them in a respectful manner. Chapter 1530 God of Creation Ceremony? Chapter 1530 God of Creation Ceremony 1530 God of Creation Ceremony, Exalted Blacksmith, huh? You're all that I've been hearing about lately. It's nice to meet you finally. Star Forging Blacksmith stood up and extended his arms to bow respectfully. There's no need to call us seniors when you're already above us in terms of skills. Relentless Blacksmith said. Despite his youth and relative inexperience, Tian Qiyuan's skills were already surpassing those of his elders. In their world, skill was the ultimate measure of seniority. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith suddenly sneered. Is he really as good as they say? I know he won against Eternal Blacksmith and Heaven and Earth Blacksmith in a competition, but that doesn't mean much to me. I'm not convinced by you, Exalted Blacksmith. You came out of the blue with all of these ridiculous achievements. You're more suspicious than anything, and whatever you're hiding, he'll be sure to expose it. You can ignore him, Exalted Blacksmith. He's a very jealous man with a few missing brain cells. None of us takes him seriously. Silver Flame Blacksmith, the only female divine blacksmith, said with a smile on her face. The fuck did you just say, you silver-haired bitch? I'll fucking kill you. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith roared. As you can see, he truly lives up to his name with his fiery temper. But don't worry, he's all bark and no bite. Yin-Yang Blacksmith laughed out loud. Exalted Blacksmith, come join me. I have a spot here for you and your friend. Eternal Blacksmith pointed at the seats beside him. Tian Qiyuan nodded and sat beside him. Once he was seated, Eternal Blacksmith asked him, what do you think about Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's decision to perform his God of Creation ceremony? I can't really say since I don't know him well enough. What do you think? You've been rivals for a long time, right? Tian Qiyuan said. Indeed, we've been rivals for the longest, ever since we were mere apprentice blacksmiths at the academy. Even during our time at the academy he would always try to one-up me and end up screwing himself over. I want to say that it'll be different this time, but I truthfully don't think he's ready yet. However, I'd be more than happy if he proves me wrong. Eternal Blacksmith said. Despite being rivals, the two of them were also friends. If he fails the God of Creation ceremony this time, he'll only have one more chance left, which will put immense pressure on him. Silver Flame Blacksmith said. All of the divine blacksmiths besides Tian Qiyuan have attempted the God of Creation ceremony once, with Heaven and Earth Blacksmith attempting his second one. When will you perform your first God of Creation ceremony, Exalted Blacksmith? Star Forging Blacksmith inquired out of curiosity. Tian Qiyuan smiled behind his mask and said, It'll be a while before I attempt the God of Creation ceremony. He can't even craft celestial-grade treasures yet. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith sneered. Tian Qiyuan did not reveal that he had already successfully crafted a celestial-grade treasure, so only Zi Xuan was aware of this information. He only intended to do so when he was prepared for the God of Creation ceremony. Sometime later, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith showed up at the Grand Elder Summit with 7 other individuals. These individuals were from the Ancient Anvil Association, a vast community of blacksmiths. To be acknowledged as an official blacksmith, one must receive a permit from the Ancient Anvil Association. The elders of the Ancient Anvil Association must also be present to witness the God of Creation ceremony. Only with their presence would it be considered legitimate. Sometime later, one of the individuals from the Ancient Anvil Association hovered above the arena and spoke loudly, "Welcome to Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's second attempt at the God of Creation ceremony. In order to be acknowledged as the God of Creation, one must have at least a 25% success rate. During the God of Creation ceremony, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith will attempt to craft 25 celestial-grade treasures, and he has 100 attempts to do so. Due to the number of celestial-grade treasures that must be crafted, the God of Creation ceremony typically lasts over a century. Now Heaven and Earth Blacksmith will give a brief speech." Heaven and Earth Blacksmith rose into the air before speaking. "I am aware that my God of Creation ceremony may appear rushed, but I guarantee you that's not the case, and I will prove it to you by becoming the next God of Creation." When Heaven and Earth Blacksmith spoke, his gaze remained on Eternal Blacksmith for the longest. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith kept his speech short and immediately began preparing for the God of Creation ceremony. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith will now be given 1 year to prepare. The Ancient Anvil Association announced. Then a Tier 8 Array Master appeared to create a formation around Heaven and Earth Blacksmith to prevent any disturbance. Once Heaven and Earth Blacksmith closed his eyes, the audience immediately began speaking with each other while many of them also closed their eyes to cultivate. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith seems pretty confident. Maybe he's just putting up the act. Have some faith in him, will y'all? Meanwhile, Tian Qiyuan closed his eyes to practice inside his head. "I'm going to cultivate. You don't need to wait for me," he said to Zi Xuan, who nodded. Most people tend to watch the God of Creation ceremony for a few days to weeks before leaving. After all, nobody was expected to witness the entire ceremony, which could last for over a century. While all individuals from the Ancient Anvil Association must be present, only 3 are required to watch the ceremony, so they take turns watching Heaven and Earth Blacksmith while the others cultivate. A year later, the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith emerged from his cultivation and began crafting his first celestial-grade treasure, marking the commencement of the God of Creation ceremony. So it's finally begun. Eternal Blacksmith mumbled as he prepared himself to watch the entire ceremony without missing a moment. Chapter 1531 God of Creation Ceremony, 2. Chapter 1531 God of Creation Ceremony, 2. 1531 God of Creation Ceremony, 2. In order to complete the God of Creation ceremony and become the next God of Creation, one must not only successfully 25 celestial-grade treasures within 100 attempts but also craft 5 different types of weapons, so Heaven and Earth Blacksmith could not just craft his specialties. For his first treasure, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith went for gauntlets, which he succeeded after spending almost 2 years on it. His second crafted treasure also turned out to be gauntlets, but it took him 2 attempts to do so. In the blink of an eye, 10 years have passed since Heaven and Earth Blacksmith started his God of Creation ceremony, and he had just finished his second celestial grade treasure. His third, fourth, and fifth treasures also turned out to be gauntlets, but that took him 5 attempts. By this point, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was 20 years into his God of Creation ceremony, with 5 celestial grade treasures and 7 failures. With 80 attempts and 20 celestial grade treasures left to craft, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was doing pretty well. Since he had to craft 5 different types of treasures, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith was limited to 5 treasures of each type, so he had to craft a different type of treasure for his next one. For his 6th creation, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith decided to craft the bow. He continued crafting the bow until his 11th celestial grade treasure. 50 years have passed since Heaven and Earth Blacksmith started his God of Creation ceremony, and due to fatigue, it was taking him longer to craft each treasure. Once the God of Creation ceremony began, there would be no breaks until it was completed. Most of the audience that were there on the first day had already left, but the audience remained pretty crowded with constant newcomers. Zi Xuan left after 5 years, but Tian Qiyuan remained. He spent most of his time in meditation and only woke up every few years to see Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's progress. The only person there who watched from the beginning without taking any breaks was Eternal Blacksmith, who was determined to witness Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's entire ceremony. When Heaven and Earth Blacksmith finished his 15th celestial grade treasure, had used up 47 attempts. While having 53 attempts to complete 10 celestial grade treasures may seem promising, one must consider the Heaven and Earth Blacksmith's fatigue and the fact that he would be crafting treasures outside his area of expertise, which would significantly increase his failure rate. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith started crafting spears for his 16th celestial grade treasure. By the time he finished his 20th treasure, Heaven and Earth Blacksmith only had 16 attempts left to craft the last 5 treasures. Do you think he'll do it? Eternal Blacksmith revealed the true reason for delaying his ceremony for 1,000 years, which greatly surprised everyone. To think he would experience enlightenment at his level. I guess this is the end of our rivalry. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith sighed after learning of this. Eternal Blacksmith continued, "Not only will I complete the God of Creation ceremony, but I will do so in less than 50 attempts." His bold declaration shocked everyone there. Heavens! In less than 50 attempts. Just what kind of enlightenment did he experience? Silver Flame Blacksmith exclaimed in a shocked voice. Such a bold claim. I wonder what kind of performance he'll show us. Yin Yang Blacksmith muttered. Without further elaborating on his declaration, Eternal Blacksmith went into meditation to prepare for the God of Creation ceremony. Chapter 1532 The New God of Creation. Chapter 1532 The New God of Creation 1532 The New God of Creation. What do you think of Eternal Blacksmith's declaration? Zi Xuan asked Tian Qiyuan out of curiosity. It would be amazing if he actually achieves such a feat, he calmly responded. Really? You're not worried? Why should I be? Tian Qiyuan responded, his voice tinged with a hint of indifference. He'll become the next God of Creation, you know. So what? It's not like that position will be his forever. I can still challenge for it. Don't you have to beat his record if you want to become the God of Creation after him? Zi Xuan asked. Yes, and I also have to defeat him in a match. If the position of God of Creation is already occupied, anyone who challenges that title must not only surpass the God of Creation's record during their God of Creation ceremony but also defeat them in a one-on-one match. A year passed in the blink of an eye, and Eternal Blacksmith emerged from his meditation and immediately began hammering away. Once the Eternal Blacksmith began working, it took only moments for the other divine blacksmiths to notice a significant change in the way he struck the material. His movements were more refined and carried a profound quality that even they could not fully comprehend. My lord, he's improved so much, it's like he became a different person. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith exclaimed in a shocked voice. He was the most familiar with the way Eternal Blacksmith smithied, so he was the most surprised out of everyone there. Looks like it wasn't just any ordinary enlightenment. Star Forging Blacksmith mumbled. Since when was there ordinary enlightenments? No matter how minor or major, an enlightenment is still an enlightenment. Even a minor enlightenment could transform a carp into a dragon, drastically improving them. Silver Flame Blacksmith said. And if you consider Eternal Blacksmith's already deep understanding and vast experience, even a minor enlightenment would be unfathomably profound. Relentless Blacksmith added. Eternal Blacksmith's first creation was a dagger. Unlike Heaven and Earth Blacksmith, Eternal Blacksmith wanted to get the weapon types he didn't excel at out of the way while he still had plenty of energy, as that would give him the highest success rate. His first creation was a success and so was his second. He failed his third attempt but succeeded on his fourth attempt. Eternal Blacksmith proceeded to succeed every other creation. 30 years passed swiftly, and Eternal Blacksmith was on his 30th attempt and 14th creation, which he succeeded in creating. Eternal Blacksmith now had 15 successful creations while being only on his 31st attempt, so he had 19 more attempts to craft the remaining 10 treasures to fulfill his own declaration. Chapter 1533 Ancient Anvil Association. Chapter 1533 Ancient Anvil Association 1533 Ancient Anvil Association. Have you heard? Exalted Blacksmith has returned and announced that he would be doing the God of Creation ceremony. No way. The one who disappeared from the world after Eternal Blacksmith became the God of Creation 9,000 years ago. When is he going to do the God of Creation ceremony? He said he's going to do it next month. Next month? That's too soon. Once news of Tian Qiyuan's God of Creation ceremony spread, people from around the world flocked to the Grand Elder Summit, where he would perform the ceremony. The Grand Elder Summit, again? It'll definitely become a tradition to perform the ceremony there from now on. At the Grand Elder Summit, countless people gathered there, including the divine blacksmiths as well as the God of Creation. I knew he was training in seclusion, but I didn't anticipate he would perform the God of Creation ceremony this soon. Silver Flame Blacksmith said out loud. It's been around 10,000 years since he became a divine blacksmith, right? This is a little too soon no matter how I look at it. Star Forging Blacksmith sighed. Can he even craft celestial grade treasures? I bet he rushed to perform the ceremony the moment he crafted his first celestial grade treasure. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith laughed in a mocking tone. What do you think of Exalted Blacksmith's decision to perform the ceremony, God of Creation? Heaven and Earth Blacksmith asked him. God of Creation pondered for a moment before responding. He crafted his first Empyrean grade treasure around 10,000 years ago. Even if he's managed to improve enough to craft celestial grade treasures with this little time, I cannot imagine he could have achieved a high success rate. Relentless Blacksmith nodded in agreement with God of Creation and said, I share the same sentiment. No matter how talented you are, there is a limit to what you can achieve. All of us performed our first God of Creation ceremony after 100,000 years of achieving celestial grade treasure too. Let's bet on how much treasure he'll craft. He'll bet a glistening cold or on 5. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith suddenly said. That sounds fun. He'll bet a 9-inch long and 3-inch thick ancient burning wood on 12. Relentless Blacksmith said. The others also joined in on the fun. Can I join you guys? A new voice suddenly resounded. The group of divine blacksmiths turned to look at the person who had just spoken simultaneously. If it isn't the Sword Goddess. Of course you can join in on the fun. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said, knowing that she was a friend of Tian Qiyuan. So what's your bet? Fiery Heaven Blacksmith asked. I'll bet this. Zi Xuan retrieved an entire golden celestial tree from her spatial ring, shocking everyone there. You're betting an entire golden celestial tree? And it's at least 1 million years old. Yang Blacksmith exclaimed in a shocked voice. Is it too much? They'll change it if you don't want it, Zi Xuan casually said. Who said anything about not wanting it? If you want to bet that, by all means. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith laughed. What is your prediction? Silver Flame Blacksmith asked. Without hesitation, Zi Xuan responded with a calm smile on her face. I'll bet on 100. Everyone paying attention to their little gamble raised their eyebrows in a puzzled manner after hearing her words, most of them believing they had misheard her. Did I hear you correctly? That you'd bet on Exalted Blacksmith crafting 100 celestial grade treasures during the ceremony? God of Creation asked with a look of disbelief on his face. Indeed, you heard me correctly. Zi Xuan calmly nodded her head. After a moment of silence, Fiery Heaven Blacksmith burst out laughing. Ha! If you're trying to donate that golden celestial tree to one of us, just say so. There's no need to utter such nonsense. The other divine blacksmiths also laughed out loud. None of them could take Zi Xuan seriously after all. Alright, since everyone is having fun, I'll join too. God of Creation said as he retrieved a rare material from his spatial ring. "I'll bet on 20. 20? You're overestimating him too much, God of Creation." Fiery Heaven Blacksmith shook his head. "We'll see about that," he calmly said. The people who sat around them wanted to join in on the fun, but none of them had the guts to do so, as the divine blacksmith's presence was simply too much for them, not to mention the God of Creation himself. Sometime later, Tian Qiyuan showed up at the Grand Elder's Summit. However, there was an issue that most of the people there immediately noticed. Where is the ancient Anvil Association? Star Forging Blacksmith questioned out loud. Perhaps they're running late? Silver Flame Blacksmith said. There's no way they would be late to the God of Creation ceremony. It's sacred for them. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith said. Exalted Blacksmith, where is the ancient Anvil Association? You are aware that their presence is essential for the ceremony's legitimacy, are you not? The God of Creation inquired. Tian Qiyuan looked at him and said, I know, but I don't think they'll show up. Why is that? God of Creation became even more puzzled. Because I refuse to be associated with them, he calmly said. What? You're telling me that you've been an unofficial blacksmith this entire time? Heaven and Earth Blacksmith exclaimed in a bewildered voice. That's right. Tian Qiyuan calmly nodded. To be officially recognized as a blacksmith, one must register with the Ancient Anvil Association. Impossible. How come the Ancient Anvil Association hasn't mentioned this before? Silver Flame Blacksmith asked, her voice filled with disbelief. More importantly, why did you refuse to accept them? They're recognized by almost every blacksmith in the world, the God of Creation asked. It's simply a matter of pettiness, Tian Qiyuan replied with a casual shrug. We had some disagreements in the past and I've held a grudge ever since. His words left everyone speechless. Once the ceremony ends, we will confront him together. Sometime later, Tian Qiyuan prepared to begin the God of Creation ceremony. Even though it was not official and without the presence of the Ancient Anvil Association, nobody wanted to miss this occasion. As of this moment, countless people from around the world were spectating Tian Qiyuan's ceremony. I will now begin my God of Creation ceremony. Thank you all for being here. Tian Qiyuan gave the audience a quick bow before retrieving a large mountain of materials and placing them on the ground. Typically, the Ancient Anvil Association supplied the materials for the God of Creation ceremony and kept every treasure crafted during the event. However, without the association present, Tian Qiyuan had to use his own materials. Fortunately, there was no limitations on the type of materials used for the ceremony as long as the results created from it was celestial grade. After taking out the materials, Tian Qiyuan immediately started refining them, leaving the spectators speechless. What the hell? He's going straight into it without any mental preparations. I've never seen anyone do this before. Relentless Blacksmith exclaimed in a shocked voice. Did he forget? I also made many mistakes during my first ceremony. Silver Flame Blacksmith muttered. What a fool. He'll definitely win this bet. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith laughed out loud, even slapping his thighs. I am truly speechless. Heaven and Earth Blacksmith sighed. The whole audience was left bewildered by Tian Qiyuan's actions. Nobody knew if it was a mistake or done on purpose, but they were certain that had messed up severely by not taking the time to prepare for it. As Tian Qiyuan neared his first month of the ceremony, he started forming the shape of the weapon. What? He's already almost done. Impossible. It's only been a month. Star Forging Blacksmith stood up in shock. Looks like he's craft swords first. Yin Yang Blacksmith mumbled. After another week, Tian Qiyuan finished his first treasure. Heavens, he really crafted a celestial-grade treasure in a month. Even the God of Creation requires half a year to do so. The other blacksmiths muttered to each other. Tian Qiyuan immediately moved on to his second treasure. Another month later he began forming its shape. He's crafting a dagger this time? Once again, Tian Qiyuan's unpredictable actions left the audience confused and speechless. He's done it? He successfully crafted 2 treasures in a row. In 2 months too. How long will he be able to continue at this pace? A month later, Tian Qiyuan crafted his 3rd treasure, a bow. Then, in another month, he crafted a spear for his 4th treasure. For the 5th treasure he crafted a fan. In less than half a year, Tian Qiyuan successfully crafted 5 treasures with 5 attempts. The audience was so shocked that they could only silently watch him continue with wide eyes, their body numb. This can't be. He's definitely cheating somehow. There's no way he crafted 5 celestial-grade treasures in a row, much less in 5 months. Fiery Heaven Blacksmith suddenly blurted out loud. However, God of Creation responded in a serious tone, "Can you prove that he's cheating? With so many people watching his every move, wouldn't someone have already noticed it if he was cheating? Or are you saying that he's skillful enough to cheat in front of so many people, including me?" "That's exactly what I am saying. There's no way he's able to achieve this legitimately." "Then shut your mouth and keep watching closely. Since you're so confident he's cheating, prove it." Star Forging Blacksmith said without taking his eyes off Tian Qiyuan. It was inevitable that some people would think Tian Qiyuan was cheating. However, without any proof they can only continue watching until they can expose him. Zi Xuan was the only one in the audience who watched with a calm expression, free of any suspicion in her gaze. "Welcome back, Exalted Blacksmith," she mumbled. "That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."